Tired of the emptiness of his life of luxury, a millionaire disguises himself as a mailman in a humble neighborhood. He meets a humble teacher who awakens something in him that he hasn't felt in years. Unaware of his true identity, her mother treats him with coldness and disdain. At 38, he was at the pinnacle of success, a self-made billionaire with a business empire that spanned continents. Yet as he stood there in his perfectly tailored Tom Ford suit, a glass of 30-year-old scotch in hand, he felt nothing but an overwhelming sense of emptiness. The penthouse was silent save for the soft hum of the central air conditioning. It was a space designed to impress with its minimalist decor, priceless art pieces, and state-of-the-art technology. But to Alexander, it felt more like a museum than a home. He took a sip of his scotch, savoring the burn as it slid down his throat, a momentary distraction from the hollowness that seemed to echo in every corner of his life. His phone buzzed insistently on the marble countertop of the kitchen island. Alexander ignored it, knowing it was probably his assistant, reminding him of the charity gala he was supposed to attend that evening. Another night of fake smiles, insincere handshakes, and vapid conversations about stock prices and mergers. The thought alone made him feel suffocated. He loosened his tie and walked over to his home office, a space dominated by a large mahogany desk and walls lined with awards and accolades. Each plaque and trophy told a story of his meteoric rise in the business world. Forbes Entrepreneur of the Year, Time Magazine's 100 Most Influential People, the Presidential Medal of Freedom for his philanthropic work. Yet as he looked at them now, they seemed to mock him, shiny reminders of a success that felt increasingly hollow. Alexander sank into his leather chair, swiveling to face the wall of achievements. His mind wandered to the day he received his first major business award. He had been elated, feeling like he had finally proven himself to the world, to his parents who had doubted his decision to drop out of college and start his own company. Now, a decade and a half later, that excitement had faded into a dull ache of dissatisfaction. He reached for a framed photo on his desk, one of the few personal items in the entire penthouse. It showed a younger version of himself, standing next to his parents at his college graduation. His father's arm was around his shoulders, a rare display of affection, while his mother beamed with pride. Alexander traced the outline of their faces with his finger, a lump forming in his throat. They had passed away in a car accident just a year after this photo was taken, never getting to see the empire their son would build. "What would you think of me now?" he whispered to the photo. "Would you be proud of what I've become, or would you see through this facade like I do?" The buzzing of his phone interrupted his reverie. With a sigh, he picked it up, seeing multiple missed calls and messages from his assistant Jessica. "Mr. Blackwood, the car is waiting downstairs. The gala starts in an hour, and you're expected to give the opening speech," read the latest message. Alexander stared at the screen, feeling a sudden urge to throw the phone across the room. Instead, he took a deep breath and typed out a reply. "Cancel everything, I'm not feeling well." He hit send before he could second-guess himself, then turned off the phone completely. The silence that followed felt liberating. For the first time in years, he had no obligations, no expectations to meet, even if just for one night. Walking back to the living room, Alexander caught his reflection in a large mirror. He hardly recognized the man staring back at him. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his jawline sharp, his blue eyes clear and piercing. But there was something missing, a spark that had long since faded. "Who are you?" he asked his reflection. "What do you really want?" The questions hung in the air, unanswered. Alexander had spent so long being what others expected him to be, the brilliant entrepreneur, the generous philanthropist, the eligible bachelor, that he had lost sight of his true self. He walked back to the windows, looking down at the bustling streets below. People scurried about like ants, each caught up in their own lives, their own struggles and dreams. For a moment, Alexander envied them. Despite the hardships they might face, at least they had a sense of purpose, a reason to wake up each morning. As he stood there, contemplating the vast city spread out before him, a sudden, wild idea took root in his mind. What if he could step out of this gilded cage, even for a little while? What if he could experience life as one of those people down there, free from the burden of his wealth and status? The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. Alexander felt his heart rate quicken, a sensation he hadn't experienced in years. It was the feeling of being alive, of standing on the precipice of something unknown and thrilling. Without allowing himself to overthink it, he strode to his bedroom and changed into the most nondescript clothes he could find: a pair of jeans, a plain t-shirt, and a hooded sweatshirt. He grabbed a backpack and stuffed it with some cash and a few essentials. As he was about to leave, his eyes fell on the photo from his desk. After a moment's hesitation, he took it out of the frame and slipped it into his backpack. It was the one piece of his old life he couldn't bear to leave behind. Alexander took one last look around the penthouse at the trappings of success that had become his prison. Then, with a deep breath, he stepped into the private elevator that would take him down to the garage where his driver waited. As the elevator descended, Alexander felt a mix of anxiety and excitement coursing through his veins. He had no plan, no idea where this impulsive decision would lead him, but for the first time in years, he felt truly alive. The elevator doors opened, revealing his longtime driver, Michael, standing next to the sleek black limousine. "Good evening, Mr. Blackwood," Michael said, a hint of surprise in his voice as he took in Alexander's casual attire. "I thought you weren't feeling well. Shall I take you to the doctor?" Alexander shook his head, a small smile playing on his lips. "No, Michael. Tonight I need you to take me somewhere else. Somewhere real." Michael's eyebrows furrowed in confusion, his hand still on the door handle of the limousine. "I'm sorry, sir, but I don't understand. Where exactly would you like to go?" Alexander paused, realizing he hadn't thought this far ahead. His impulsive decision to escape his gilded cage had led him to this moment, but he had no destination in mind. He looked at Michael, really looked at him for perhaps the first time in years, and an idea struck him. "Michael," Alexander began, his voice softer than usual, "where do you live?" The driver's confusion deepened. "Sir? Your neighborhood," Alexander clarified. "What's it like? Is it real?" Michael hesitated, clearly unsure of how to respond to this unusual line of questioning from his employer. "Well, Mr. Blackwood, I live in Queens, Sunnyside to be exact. It's not fancy, but it's home. Real enough, I suppose." A smile spread across Alexander's face, a genuine one that reached his eyes, a rare occurrence in recent years. "Perfect. That's where I want to go." "To Sunnyside." Michael's eyes widened in surprise, but he quickly schooled his features back into professional neutrality. "As you wish, sir. Any particular destination in Sunnyside?" Alexander shook his head. "No, just drive me around. Show me your neighborhood, Michael. Show me where real people live." Still looking perplexed but unwilling to question his employer further, Michael nodded and opened the car door. As Alexander slid into the back seat, he caught a glimpse of his driver's face in the rearview mirror. There was a mix of concern and curiosity in Michael's eyes, but he said nothing as he started the engine and pulled out of the garage. The drive from Manhattan to Queens was like a journey between two worlds. As they crossed the Queensboro Bridge, Alexander watched the glittering skyscrapers of Manhattan recede in the distance. The familiar landscape of power and wealth gave way to a more modest, lived-in environment. The streets became narrower, the buildings shorter and less imposing. Signs in various languages began to appear, hinting at the diverse community they were entering. Alexander leaned forward, his face almost pressed against the window as he took in every detail. The sidewalks were busy with people going about their evening routines. Parents walking hand in hand with children, teenagers hanging out in front of bodegas, elderly couples taking leisurely strolls. It was a tapestry of life so different from the sterile, curated world he was used to. As they drove deeper into Sunnyside, Alexander's attention was caught by a small crowd gathered in front of what looked like a community center. A colorful banner hung above the entrance proclaiming Sunnyside Community Library Family Reading Night. "Michael, stop the car," Alexander said suddenly. The driver complied, pulling over to the curb. "Is everything all right, Mr. Blackwood?" Alexander nodded, his eyes still fixed on the scene outside. "Yes, everything's fine. I want to take a closer look." Before Michael could respond, Alexander had opened the door and stepped out onto the sidewalk. The sounds and smells of the neighborhood enveloped him immediately. The chatter of conversations in multiple languages, the aroma of various cuisines wafting from nearby restaurants, the distant laughter of children playing in a park. He approached the community center, blending in easily with his casual attire. Nobody gave him a second glance. A novel experience for someone used to being the center of attention wherever he went. As he got closer, he could see families entering the building, many carrying books or holding the hands of excited children. A woman stood at the entrance greeting people with a warm smile. She was in her early 30s, with curly brown hair pulled back in a messy bun, and warm hazel eyes that crinkled at the corners when she smiled. She wore a simple sundress and comfortable flats, a stark contrast to the designer-clad women Alexander usually encountered. "Welcome to family reading night," she called out cheerfully to a group approaching the entrance. "We're so glad you could make it. We've got some great stories lined up tonight." Alexander found himself drawn to her enthusiasm. Without really thinking about it, he joined the line of people entering the building. As he approached the entrance, the woman turned her radiant smile on him. "Hi there. I don't think I've seen you at one of our events before. I'm Emma, the community librarian. Welcome to family reading night." For a moment, Alexander was at a loss for words. It had been so long since someone had spoken to him without an agenda, without knowing or caring who he was. "I'm Alex," he said, using a shortened version of his name that felt more fitting for this new persona he was trying on. "I'm new to the neighborhood. This looked interesting." Emma's smile widened. "Well, Alex, you're in for a treat. We've got local authors reading their work, a puppet show for the kids, and even a poetry slam later for the adults. Why don't you come in and see for yourself?" Alexander nodded, returning her smile with a tentative one of his own. As he stepped into the community center, he felt as though he was crossing a threshold into a different world. The interior was modest but welcoming, with cheerful posters promoting reading and education covering the walls. The main room was filled with folding chairs arranged in a semicircle around a small stage. People of all ages were settling in, an excited buzz of conversation filling the air. He found an empty chair near the back and sat down, his eyes roaming over the diverse crowd. There were families with young children, elderly couples, teenagers, and everything in between. The sense of community was palpable, something Alexander realized he had been missing in his life for a long time. As the event began, with Emma introducing the first reader, Alexander found himself captivated. The stories shared were not polished bestsellers or academic tomes, but honest, heartfelt tales of everyday life, love, struggle, and triumph. He listened to a young girl nervously read a poem about her immigrant grandmother's courage, an elderly man share a humorous anecdote about his first job, and a middle-aged woman read a chapter from her novel in progress about finding love later in life. Each story resonated with Alexander in a way he hadn't expected. These were not the carefully crafted narratives of the business world or the superficial small talk of high society events. They were raw, real glimpses into the lives of ordinary people, filled with a passion and authenticity that moved him deeply. As the evening progressed, Alexander found himself relaxing, laughing along with the crowd at the funny moments, and feeling a lump in his throat during the more poignant readings. For the first time in years, he felt connected to something larger than himself, part of a community that valued stories and human connection over status and wealth. During a brief intermission, Alexander overheard a conversation between two elderly women sitting nearby. "It's such a shame," one of them was saying, shaking her head sadly. "Emma puts her heart and soul into this place, but I heard the funding's being cut again. I don't know how much longer she can keep it going." The other woman nodded in agreement. "It's not right. This library is the heart of our community. What will happen to all these children if it closes? Where will they go after school? Who will help them with their homework and encourage them to read?" Alexander felt a pang in his chest. He looked towards the front of the room where Emma was chatting animatedly with a group of children, her face alight with genuine joy. The stark contrast between the warmth and vitality of this place and the cold, empty luxury of his penthouse struck him forcefully. As the event drew to a close, Alexander remained in his seat, lost in thought. The room gradually emptied, but he barely noticed, his mind whirling with new ideas and emotions he couldn't quite name. "Did you enjoy the event?" The voice startled him out of his reverie. He looked up to see Emma standing next to his chair, her smile as warm as ever despite the tiredness evident in her eyes. Yes," Alexander said, surprised by the sincerity in his own voice. "It was wonderful. Thank you for organizing it." Emma's smile widened. "I'm glad you liked it. We try to do these events regularly." It's so important to foster a love of reading and storytelling in the community. She paused, a shadow passing over her face. Though I'm not sure how many more we'll be able to do. Alexander felt an unexpected urge to help, to do something, anything, to ensure that this vibrant community space could continue. But he held back, aware that he was just Alex here, a newcomer to the neighborhood, not Alexander Blackwood, the billionaire who could solve the problem with a single phone call. That's a shame, he managed to say. This seems like such a valuable resource for the community. Emma nodded, her expression a mix of determination and worry. It is, but we'll find a way. We always do. She glanced at her watch. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize how late it was. I need to start cleaning up. It was nice meeting you, Alex. I hope we'll see you at Emma's words hung in the air as she hurried off to begin the cleanup process. Alexander sat there for a moment, watching as she moved around the room, straightening chairs and gathering discarded programs. Her energy seemed inexhaustible, even after hours of coordinating the event. Without thinking, Alexander stood up and began to help, picking up stray cups and papers. Emma looked up, surprise evident on her face. Oh, you don't have to do that, she said, but the gratitude in her voice was clear. Alexander shrugged, offering a small smile. I want to. It's the least I can do after such a great evening. As they worked side by side, Alexander found himself stealing glances at Emma. There was something about her that intrigued him, a passion and dedication that seemed to radiate from her very being. It was so different from the calculated ambition he was used to in his corporate world. So, Alex, Emma said as they folded the last of the chairs, what brings you to Sunnyside? You mentioned you're new to the neighborhood. Alexander hesitated, realizing he hadn't thought through his cover story. I'm taking some time off, he said finally, deciding to stick as close to the truth as possible. Needed a change of scenery, you know. Emma nodded understandingly. Sometimes a fresh start is exactly what we need. Well, you couldn't have picked a better place. Sunnyside might not be glamorous, but it's got heart. I can see that, Alexander replied, thinking of the warmth and community spirit he'd witnessed that evening. This library, it seems to be a big part of that heart. A shadow passed over Emma's face, but she quickly masked it with a smile. It is. We try our best to be a hub for the community, especially for the kids. Speaking of which, she glanced at her watch and her eyes widened. Oh no, is that the time? I'm sorry, Alex, but I've got to lock up. I have an early start tomorrow. It's career day at the local elementary school. You're a teacher too, Alexander asked, impressed. Emma laughed, a melodious sound that seemed to brighten the room. No, not officially, but I do a lot of work with the schools in the area. Reading programs, tutoring, that sort of thing. Tomorrow, I'm talking to the kids about being a librarian and the importance of literacy. As they walked towards the exit, Alexander found himself reluctant to leave. This brief glimpse into a world so different from his own had awakened something in him. A curiosity, a hunger for more. Would it be okay if I came back? He asked hesitantly as Emma locked the door behind them. Maybe volunteer or something. Emma's face lit up. Really? That would be wonderful. We can always use more help, especially with our after-school programs. Why don't you come by tomorrow afternoon? I can show you around properly and we can see where you might fit in. Alexander nodded, a warm feeling spreading through his chest. I'd like that. Thank you, Emma. As they parted ways, Alexander watched Emma walk down the street, her curly hair bouncing with each step. He stood there for a moment, the cool night air a stark contrast to the warmth he'd felt inside the library. Finally, he turned and walked back to where Michael was waiting with the car. The driver's eyebrows rose questioningly, but he said nothing as Alexander slid into the back seat. Michael, Alexander said after a moment of silence, do you know of any hotels in this area? Nothing fancy, just a normal place where people might stay if they were new to the neighborhood. Michael's surprise was evident in the rearview mirror, but he quickly composed himself. Yes, sir. There's a decent place a few blocks from here. Family run, been there for years. Would you like me to take you there? Alexander nodded, his mind already racing with plans. He needed clothes, toiletries, a backstory. He needed to become Alex, the newcomer to Sunnyside, at least for a little while. As Michael drove, Alexander pulled out his phone and switched it on. Immediately, it buzzed with a flood of missed calls and messages. He ignored them all, quickly composing an email to his executive assistant. Jessica, I'm taking an indefinite leave of absence for personal reasons. Cancel all my appointments for the foreseeable future. The board can handle day-to-day operations. I'll be unreachable, but I'm fine. Do not try to find me. I'll be in touch when I'm ready. AB. He hit send before he could second-guess himself, then turned off the phone again. The sense of liberation he felt was exhilarating and terrifying in equal measure. The car pulled up in front of a modest hotel. It was clean and well-maintained, but a far cry from the five-star establishments Alexander was accustomed to. Perfect. Michael, Alexander said as he prepared to exit the car, I need you to do something for me. Of course, sir, Michael replied, his professional demeanor intact despite the strange events of the evening. I need you to keep this expedition to yourself. As far as anyone knows, you dropped me off at home and that's the last you saw of me. Can you do that? Michael was silent for a moment, then nodded. Yes, Mr. Blackwood, but may I speak freely? Alexander nodded, curious. Whatever you're doing, sir, whatever you're looking for, I hope you find it. You deserve to be happy. The simple sincerity of Michael's words caught Alexander off guard. He felt a lump form in his throat. Thank you, Michael. That means a lot. With a final nod to his driver, Alexander stepped out of the car and into his new life. He watched as the sleek black vehicle disappeared around the corner, carrying with it the last vestiges of his old identity. Inside the hotel, the front desk clerk barely glanced up as Alexander approached. There was no recognition in her eyes, no special treatment. He was just another guest, another face. The anonymity was refreshing. Room for one, please, he said, placing a credit card on the counter. It wasn't his usual black American Express, but a more modest card he kept for emergencies. I'm not sure how long I'll be staying. The clerk nodded, tapping at her computer. Not a problem, sir. We can set you up on a day-to-day basis. Room 305 is available. It's got a nice view of the street if you're interested in people watching. Alexander smiled, thinking of the vibrant neighborhood he'd witnessed earlier. That sounds perfect, thank you. As he settled into his room, small but clean, with a comfortable-looking bed and a desk by the window, Alexander felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. He was stepping into unknown territory, leaving behind everything he'd known for... what? He wasn't sure yet, but as he looked out the window at the street below, watching people hurry home after a long day, he felt more alive than he had in years. He thought of Emma, of her passion for her work and her community. He thought of the stories he'd heard at the library, of ordinary people living extraordinary lives in their own ways, and for the first time in a long time, Alexander Blackwood, now just Alex, felt a spark of something he'd thought long extinguished: hope. As he prepared for bed, his mind was already racing with plans for the next day. He would need to buy some more appropriate clothes, maybe explore the neighborhood a bit before heading to the library in the afternoon. He felt like a kid on the night before a big adventure, nervous and thrilled all at once. Just before he turned out the light, Alex's eyes fell on his backpack. He reached in and pulled out the photo he'd brought from his penthouse, the one of him with his parents at his college graduation. He propped it up on the bedside table, a reminder of where he'd come from, and perhaps a guide for where he was going. Well, he said softly to the smiling faces in the photo, I guess this is the start of something new. Wish me luck. As he drifted off to sleep, the sounds of the city a gentle lullaby outside his window, Alex felt a sense of peace he hadn't experienced in years. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new experiences, and just maybe, a chance to rediscover the person he was meant to be. The morning sun streamed through the thin curtains of room 305, gently rousing Alex from his slumber. For a moment he felt disoriented, the modest surroundings a stark contrast to his usual wake-up view of the Manhattan skyline. Then, as the events of the previous day came flooding back, a small smile played on his lips. He sat up, stretching, and looked around the room. It was simple, nothing like the luxurious spaces he was accustomed to, but there was something comforting about its unpretentious nature. The photo of his parents smiled at him from the bedside table, a bridge between his past and this uncertain new present. Well, he murmured to himself, time to start this adventure properly. After a quick shower, Alex realized he had a problem. He had no clean clothes besides the ones he'd worn yesterday. Deciding that his first order of business would be to rectify this situation, he headed out into the bustling streets of Sunnyside. The neighborhood was alive with morning activity. People hurried to catch buses and subways, parents walked children to school, and the enticing aroma of fresh coffee and baked goods wafted from numerous cafes and bakeries. Alex found himself swept along in the current of everyday life, anonymous and ordinary in a way that felt surprisingly liberating. He spotted a modest clothing store a few blocks from the hotel and stepped inside. The elderly shopkeeper greeted him with a warm smile. "Good morning, young man. What can I help you with today?" Alex looked around, slightly overwhelmed by the task of choosing his own clothes without a personal shopper for the first time in years. I need some basics. I'm new in town and my luggage was lost." The shopkeeper's eyes filled with sympathy. "Oh, you poor thing. Don't worry, we'll get you sorted out in no time." What followed was a whirlwind of trying on jeans, t-shirts, button-downs and sweaters. The shopkeeper, who introduced herself as Mrs. Chen, had an eye for fit and style that rivaled any high-end fashion consultant. By the end of the impromptu shopping spree, Alex had a wardrobe that would help him blend seamlessly into his new environment. As Mrs. Chen rang up his purchases, she chatted amiably about the neighborhood. "Sunnyside's a wonderful place to live, you know. We look out for each other here. If you need anything, just ask around. Someone will always be willing to help." Alex felt a warmth spread through his chest at her words. It was a stark contrast to the cutthroat world he was used to, where every interaction was tinged with ulterior motives and hidden agendas. Leaving the store with his arms full of shopping bags, Alex's next stop was a nearby cafe for some much-needed coffee and breakfast. As he sat at a small table by the window, savoring a perfectly made latte and a fresh croissant, he found himself people-watching, fascinated by the diverse tapestry of life unfolding before him. A group of construction workers shared jokes over hearty breakfasts. A young mother expertly juggled a baby and a toddler while ordering her coffee. Two elderly men were engaged in an intense chess match in the corner. Each scene was a snapshot of real life, unfiltered and authentic, in a way that both excited and intimidated Alex. As he finished his breakfast, Alex glanced at his watch. It was still a few hours before he was due at the library to meet Emma. Feeling a sudden urge to explore, he decided to take a walk around the neighborhood. His feet carried him past small parks where children played and dog walkers chatted, by bustling local businesses, and through quiet residential streets lined with modest but well-kept homes. Every so often, he'd catch snippets of conversation in languages he didn't understand, reminding him of the rich cultural diversity of the area. As he walked, Alex found his mind wandering to Emma and the library. The passion she had shown for her work and her community had struck a chord in him. When was the last time he had felt that kind of enthusiasm for anything? His business successes had long since become routine, each new achievement feeling hollow and unsatisfying. Lost in thought, Alex almost missed the small second-hand bookstore tucked between a laundromat and a deli. Something about the quaint shop front drew him in. The bell above the door tinkled softly as he entered, announcing his presence to the empty shop. "Be with you in a moment," called a voice from the back. Alex browsed the crowded shelves, inhaling the comforting scent of old books. His fingers trailed along the spines, pausing on titles that caught his eye. He found himself in the classics section, pulling out a worn copy of To Kill a Mockingbird. "Ah, excellent choice," said a voice behind him. Alex turned to see an older man with kind eyes behind thick glasses. "Harper Lee's masterpiece. Have you read it before?" Alex nodded, a memory surfacing of reading the book in high school. "Yes, but it's been a long time." The shopkeeper smiled. "Some books are worth revisiting. We change, and so our understanding of the story changes too." He held out his hand. "I'm George, by the way. Welcome to my little corner of literary heaven." As Alex shook George's hand, he felt a sudden impulse. "I'm Alex. I'm new in town, and I volunteered to help out at the community library. Do you have any recommendations for books that might be good for their programs, especially for kids and teenagers?" George's face lit up. "Oh, working with Emma, are you? Wonderful woman doing great things for this community." He began moving through the shop, pulling books off shelves with practiced ease. Now, for the younger kids, you can't go wrong with Dr. Seuss and Roald Dahl. For the older ones, How about some Sherman Alexie or Judy Blume? Oh, and of course we must include some diverse voices. Before he knew it, Alex was leaving the shop with a stack of books and a head full of George's enthusiastic recommendations. The genuine passion the old bookseller had shown for literature and for helping the community library had been infectious. As he made his way back to the hotel to drop off his purchases before heading to the library, Alex felt a growing sense of anticipation. For the first time in years, he was stepping into a situation where he was neither expert nor leader. He would be learning, helping, possibly even making mistakes. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. Changing into some of his new clothes, a simple blue button-down shirt and comfortable jeans, Alex gathered the books he'd bought and headed towards the library. As he walked, he rehearsed what he might say to Emma, how he might explain his sudden desire to volunteer without revealing too much about his true identity. The community center came into view, looking somehow both smaller and more significant in the daylight. Alex paused for a moment, taking a deep breath. He was about to step into a world so different from the one he knew, with no idea where this path might lead him. As he approached the entrance, he saw Emma through the window, gesturing animatedly as she spoke to a group of children gathered around her. The sight brought a smile to his face and gave him the final push he needed. With one last deep breath, Alex pushed open the door and stepped inside, ready to begin this new chapter of his life. The familiar scent of books and the sound of Emma's cheerful voice washed over him as he entered, and he felt a sense of rightness settle over him. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew in that moment that he had made the right choice. Emma looked up as he entered, her face breaking into a warm smile of recognition. "Alex, you made it! Come on in, we're just finishing up our morning story time." As Alex moved further into the library, joining the circle of attentive children, he felt a sense of belonging that he hadn't experienced in years. He was no longer Alexander Blackwood, billionaire CEO. Here he was just Alex, a newcomer ready to learn and help, and for the first time in a long time, that felt like more than enough. As the last of the children filed out of the library, their excited chatter fading into the bustling sounds of the street outside, Emma turned to Alex with a bright smile. "Well, what did you think of story time?" Alex found himself returning her smile, the enthusiasm of the children still lingering in the air. "It was incredible," he said, surprised by the sincerity in his own voice. "The way you engaged with them, how their eyes lit up with each turn of the page. I've never seen anything quite like it." Emma's eyes sparkled with pride. "That's the magic of books, Alex. They have the power to transport us, to open up whole new worlds of possibility." She glanced at the stack of books in his arms. "And speaking of books, what have you got there?" Alex looked down at the pile, suddenly feeling a bit self-conscious. "Oh, I stopped by a bookstore on my way here. The owner, George, recommended these for the library programs. I hope that's okay." Emma's face lit up even more, if that was possible. "George from Once Upon a Time? Oh, he's a treasure. And how thoughtful of you to bring books." She began to flip through the stack, nodding approvingly. "These are perfect for our after-school reading program. Thank you, Alex. This is incredibly generous." Alex felt a warmth spread through his chest at her words. It was a feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time. The simple joy of doing something kind for others without any expectation of return. "Now," Emma said, setting the books aside, "let me give you a proper tour of our little haven here." As they walked through the library, Emma explained the various programs and services they offered. There was the after-school homework help, adult literacy classes, ESL programs for new immigrants, job search assistance, and so much more. Alex was amazed at how much this small community library managed to accomplish with such limited resources. "And this," Emma said, leading him to a small room at the back, "is our computer lab. We only have 5 computers, and they're a bit outdated, but they're always in use. For many in our community, this is their only access to the internet." Alex looked at the old machines, his mind already whirring with ideas for upgrades and improvements. But he held his tongue, reminding himself that he was just Alex the volunteer, not Alexander the billionaire who could solve problems with a snap of his fingers. "So, Alex," Emma said, turning to face him, "where do you think you'd like to help out? We can always use extra hands with the children's programs, or if you're more comfortable with adults, we have our literacy classes." Alex hesitated for a moment. In his old life, he was used to being in charge. making decisions that affected thousands of lives. But here he was a novice, unsure of where he could be most useful. I'm not sure, he admitted. Where do you need me most? Emma's smile softened. How about we start you with our after-school program? It's a mix of homework help and reading time. The kids are great, and I think you'd enjoy it. Alex nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. That sounds perfect. For the next few hours, Alex found himself immersed in a world he had never known existed. He helped a young girl named Maria struggle through her math homework, his heart swelling with pride when she finally grasped the concept of long division. He listened as a boy named Jamal proudly read aloud from Charlotte's Web, stumbling over some words but pressing on with determination. As the afternoon wore on, Alex found himself relaxing into his role. The children's enthusiasm was infectious, their curiosity boundless. He found himself thinking of his own childhood, of the love of learning his parents had instilled in him before the pursuit of success had overshadowed everything else. During a quiet moment, as the children were engrossed in their books, Emma sidled up to Alex. "You're a natural," she said softly. "The kids really seem to like you." Alex felt a flush of pleasure at her words. "They're amazing," he replied. "So eager to learn, so resilient. I had no idea." Emma nodded understandingly. "It's eye-opening, isn't it? These kids face so many challenges, but they keep pushing forward. That's why this place is so important. It's not just about books. It's about giving them a safe space to grow, to dream." As she spoke, Alex noticed the passion in her voice, the way her eyes lit up. He found himself wondering about her story, what had led her to dedicate her life to this community. Before he could ask, however, they were interrupted by a commotion at the front of the library. A man in his late 30s had burst in, his face flushed with anger. "Emma, we need to talk now." Emma's face fell, her earlier enthusiasm replaced by a look of resigned frustration. "I'm sorry, Alex. I need to deal with this. Can you keep an eye on the kids for a moment?" Alex nodded, watching with concern as Emma hurried to intercept the agitated man. They spoke in hushed but heated tones, their body language tense. Alex couldn't make out the words, but he could see the strain on Emma's face, the way her shoulders slumped as the man gesticulated wildly. After what seemed like an eternity, the man stormed out, leaving Emma looking deflated. She took a moment to compose herself before returning to the children's area, her smile back in place, but not quite reaching her eyes. "Everything okay?" Alex asked quietly as she rejoined him. Emma nodded, but Alex could see the worry lines around her eyes. "Just library business," she said evasively. "Nothing for you to worry about." As the last of the children were picked up by their parents, Alex helped Emma tidy up the library. He could sense that something was weighing on her, but he didn't want to pry. Instead, he focused on expressing his gratitude for the opportunity to help. "Thank you for today, Emma," he said as they walked to the front door. It was really something special." Emma's smile this time was genuine, the worry momentarily forgotten. "Thank you for volunteering, Alex. You made a real difference today. Will you come back tomorrow?" The hopefulness in her voice tugged at Alex's heart. "Wild horses couldn't keep me away," he said with a grin. As he walked back to his hotel in the gathering twilight, Alex's mind was buzzing with the events of the day. The joy of helping the children, the sense of purpose he'd felt, the warmth of Emma's smile. It all swirled together, making him feel more alive than he had in years. But underneath it all was a current of unease. The angry man at the library, the worry in Emma's eyes. There was clearly trouble brewing, and for the first time in his new life in Sunnyside, Alex felt the stirring of his old self, the problem solver, the fixer. As he entered his hotel room, his eyes fell on the photo of his parents. "What would you do?" he asked the smiling faces. "How can I help without revealing who I really am?" The photo, of course, remained silent, but as Alex prepared for bed, he felt a sense of determination settling over him. He didn't know how yet, but he was going to find a way to help Emma and the library. This community had already given him so much in just 2 days, it was time for him to give back. As he drifted off to sleep, Alex's dreams were filled with the laughter of children, the rustle of pages turning, and the warm, encouraging smile of a certain librarian who was quickly becoming the center of his new world. The next few days fell into a rhythm for Alex. one that felt both foreign and strangely comfortable. Each morning, he'd wake up in his modest hotel room, have breakfast at the local cafe where the staff now greeted him by name, and then make his way to the library. The hours he spent there were filled with the chatter of children, the rustle of pages, and the warm presence of Emma. On this particular morning, Alex arrived at the library to find Emma already deep in conversation with an elderly woman. As he approached, he could see the worry lines etched on Emma's face. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Gonzalez," Emma was saying, her voice filled with genuine concern. "We'll try to find a solution, I promise." The older woman patted Emma's hand. "I know you will, dear. You always do your best for us." As Mrs. Gonzalez left, Emma turned to Alex, attempting to mask her concern with a smile. "Good morning, Alex. Ready for another day of adventure in the world of books?" Alex nodded, but his eyes were searching Emma's face. "Is everything okay? You seem worried." Emma hesitated for a moment, then sighed. It's complicated. Mrs. Gonzalez is one of our regulars. She comes to our adult literacy classes, but she's been having trouble getting here lately. The bus route that goes by her house was cut due to budget constraints." "That's terrible," Alex said, feeling a pang in his chest. In his old life, he wouldn't have given a second thought to something as mundane as a bus route. Now he was beginning to understand how such seemingly small things could have a profound impact on people's lives. Emma nodded, her eyes distant. "It's not just Mrs. Gonzalez. A lot of our community members rely on public transportation to get here. With the recent cuts, we've seen a drop in attendance for many of our programs." Alex's mind was already whirring with potential solutions, organizing a carpool system perhaps, or even funding a private shuttle. But he bit his tongue, reminding himself that he was just Alex the volunteer, not Alexander the problem-solving CEO. "Is there anything we can do?" he asked instead. Emma's smile was tinged with sadness. "We're trying. We've started a petition to restore the bus routes, but, well, let's just say the city has other priorities." Before Alex could respond, they were interrupted by the arrival of the first wave of after-school children. Emma's demeanor changed instantly, her warm smile back in place as she greeted each child by name. As they settled into the routine of homework help and reading time, Alex found his thoughts drifting back to the problem at hand. He watched as Emma moved from child to child, offering encouragement and support, her earlier worries hidden behind a mask of cheerful efficiency. During a lull in activities, Alex found himself near the computer lab. He overheard two teenagers talking in frustrated tones. "Man, this is useless," one of them was saying. "How are we supposed to do our research project on these dinosaurs?" Alex glanced at the outdated machines, remembering Emma's words about them being the only internet access for many in the community. Another problem that could be easily solved with money he had in abundance but couldn't use without revealing his true identity. As the day wore on, Alex became increasingly aware of the myriad challenges facing the library and its patrons. A single mother struggling to find childcare so she could attend ESL classes. A group of middle schoolers sharing a single textbook for their science project. An elderly man who couldn't read the fine print on his medication labels. Each story tugged at Alex's heart, making him acutely aware of the privilege he had taken for granted for so long. But more than that, he found himself in awe of Emma and the other library staff who faced these challenges day after day with unwavering dedication. As the library was closing up for the day, Alex noticed Emma in her office, poring over what looked like financial documents. Her brow was furrowed, her usually cheerful demeanor replaced by a look of intense concentration and worry. "Emma?" he called softly, knocking on the open door. "Can I help with anything?" She looked up, startled, then quickly shuffled the papers into a folder. "Oh, Alex, no, it's fine. Just some boring administrative stuff." But Alex had caught a glimpse of the documents. Budget reports, grant applications, and what looked like a notice of funding cuts. The pieces were starting to come together in his mind, painting a picture of a community resource struggling to stay afloat. "Emma," he said gently, "I know we haven't known each other long, but if there's anything I can do to help, anything at all, please let me know." For a moment, Emma's carefully maintained composure cracked. She looked at Alex, her eyes filled with a mix of gratitude and something else, a deep, bone-weary exhaustion. "Thank you, Alex," she said softly. "You've already helped so much just by being here. It's just—" She trailed off, seeming to debate whether to continue. It's just what? Alex prompted gently. Emma sighed. The library. We're in trouble. Serious trouble. The city's slashing our budget again, and I don't know how we're going to keep all our programs running. I've been writing grant applications, trying to find corporate sponsors, but... She gestured helplessly at the stack of papers. Alex felt a familiar surge of adrenaline, the kind he used to get when faced with a challenging business problem. But this was different. This wasn't about profit margins or market share. This was about people's lives, about the heart of a community. There has to be something we can do, he said, his mind already racing with ideas. Maybe a fundraising event? Or a community outreach campaign? Emma's smile was sad but appreciative. We've tried all that. The community is incredibly supportive, but they're stretched thin too. And as for corporate sponsors, she shook her head. Let's just say we're not exactly a priority for the big companies in the city. Alex felt a pang of guilt at her words, thinking of his own company and its lavish charitable galas that did more for PR than actual community support. He made a mental note to revisit his corporate philanthropy policies when, if, he returned to his old life. Don't give up hope, he said, reaching out to squeeze Emma's hand before he could think better of it. We'll figure something out. Together. Emma looked at their joined hands, then up at Alex's face. For a moment, something electric passed between them, a connection that went beyond their shared concern for the library. Then Emma gently withdrew her hand, her professional mask slipping back into place. Thank you, Alex. Your optimism it's refreshing. Now we should probably head out. It's getting late. As they walked out of the library together, Alex's mind was churning. He knew he had the means to solve all of these problems with a single phone call. But doing so would mean revealing his true identity, potentially shattering the genuine connections he had begun to form here. They paused on the sidewalk outside the library, the streets of Sunnyside alive with the early evening bustle. Alex, Emma said suddenly, would you like to grab a coffee? There's a little place around the corner that stays open late. I could use someone to talk to. Alex felt his heart skip a beat. I'd love to, he said, meaning it more than he had meant anything in a long time. As they walked towards the cafe, Alex stealing glances at Emma's profile in the fading light, he felt himself standing on the edge of something profound. He was falling for Emma, he realized, not just her beauty or her kindness, but her passion, her dedication, her unwavering commitment to her community. But as they settled into a cozy booth at the cafe, Emma's warm smile drawing him in, Alex was acutely aware of the secret that stood between them. He was living a lie, one that grew more complicated with each passing day. As Emma began to open up about her hopes and fears for the library, Alex made a silent vow to himself. He would find a way to help, not as Alexander Blackwood the billionaire, but as Alex the volunteer. And someday, when the time was right, he would tell Emma the truth and hope that the connection they were forming was strong enough to withstand it. For now, though, he pushed those thoughts aside and focused on the woman in front of him, ready to listen, to support, and perhaps to fall a little deeper into this new life he was creating for himself. The cafe was a cozy little place, with mismatched furniture and local artwork adorning the walls. As Alex and Emma settled into a worn but comfortable booth, the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee enveloped them. The place was quiet at this hour, with only a few other patrons scattered about, creating an intimate atmosphere. A young waitress approached their table, her tired smile brightening as she recognized Emma. "The usual, Emma?" she asked. Emma nodded. "Thanks, Lila. And whatever my friend here would like." She gestured towards Alex. "I'll have the same," Alex said, realizing he didn't even know what Emma's usual was. It felt right, somehow, to follow her lead in this, as he had been doing in so many other ways lately. As Lila walked away, Emma turned to Alex, her eyes reflecting the warm glow of the cafe's Edison bulbs. "Thank you for coming," she said softly. "I don't usually, I try to keep my professional and personal life separate, but lately it's been getting harder." Alex leaned in slightly, his voice gentle. "Emma, you don't have to explain. I'm here to listen if that's what you need." She smiled gratefully, then took a deep breath. "It's just, the library means everything to me. It's not just a job, you know. It's my life's work. The thought of losing it, of letting down all those people who depend on us." She trailed off, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Alex felt an overwhelming urge to reach out and take her hand, to promise her that everything would be okay. But he held back, aware of the boundaries between them and the secrets he was keeping. "Tell me about it," he said instead. "How did you end up running the library?" Emma's face softened at the memory. "It wasn't exactly planned," she said with a small laugh. "I grew up in this neighborhood, you know. My parents were immigrants, worked multiple jobs to make ends meet. The library was my safe haven. I'd spend hours here after school reading everything I could get my hands on." She paused as Lila returned with their coffees, rich, aromatic lattes with intricate leaf designs in the foam. Emma took a sip before continuing. "There was a librarian back then, Mrs. Perez. She took me under her wing, encouraged my love of reading. When I went to college, I'd come back during breaks to volunteer. And then when Mrs. Perez retired, she recommended me for the job. I was only 24, fresh out of my master's program. I had no idea what I was getting into." Alex listened, enthralled. He could picture a younger Emma, full of idealism and passion, taking on this enormous responsibility. "It must have been challenging," he said. Emma nodded. "Oh, it was. Still is. But it's also incredibly rewarding. Every time I see a child's eyes light up when they finish their first book, or when an adult learner writes their name for the first time, it makes all the struggles worthwhile." As she spoke, Alex found himself more and more in awe of her dedication and passion. It was so different from the world he came from, where success was measured in profit margins and stock prices. "You're amazing, Emma," he said, the words slipping out before he could stop them. "What you do here, the impact you have on people's lives. It's incredible." Emma blushed slightly, looking down at her coffee. "I'm just doing my job," she said modestly. "But thank you. It means a lot to hear that, especially now." There was a moment of comfortable silence between them, filled only by the soft clinking of cups and the low murmur of conversation from the other patrons. "Can I ask you something, Alex?" Emma said suddenly, looking up to meet his eyes. "What brought you here? To Sunnyside, I mean. You mentioned taking some time off, but there's more to it, isn't there?" Alex felt his heart rate quicken. This was dangerous territory. He wanted to be honest with Emma, but he couldn't reveal the whole truth. Not yet. I was feeling lost," he said slowly, choosing his words carefully. "My life before it was successful by most standards, but it felt empty, meaningless. I needed a change, a chance to figure out what really matters." Emma nodded understandingly. "And what have you found so far?" Alex looked at her, taking in her genuine interest, the warmth in her eyes. "I've found that there's more to life than I realized," he said softly. "That true fulfillment comes from connecting with others, from making a difference, even in small ways." Emma's smile was radiant. "That's beautiful, Alex. I'm glad you found your way here." As they continued to talk, the conversation flowing easily between them, Alex felt a growing sense of contentment. They shared stories from their childhoods, laughed over embarrassing moments, and discussed their favorite books. It was the most genuine connection Alex had felt with another person in years. But as the night wore on, a shadow seemed to fall over Emma's face. She glanced at her watch and sighed. "I should probably get going," she said reluctantly. "Early start tomorrow. We're having a board meeting to discuss the budget situation." Alex nodded, trying to hide his disappointment. "Of course. Can I walk you home?" Emma hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "I'd like that." As they stepped out into the cool night air, Alex was acutely aware of Emma's presence beside him. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, their arms occasionally brushing, sending little sparks of electricity through Alex's body. "Alex," Emma said suddenly, stopping under a streetlight, "I just want you to know, having you at the library these past few days, it's been wonderful. Your enthusiasm, your dedication. It's reminded me why I do this work." Alex felt a lump form in his throat. "Emma, But before he could finish, they were interrupted by the sound of rapid footsteps approaching. A young man came running up to them, out of breath and looking distressed. "Emma, thank God I found you," he gasped. Emma's face creased with concern. "Miguel? What's wrong?" The young man, Miguel, took a deep breath. "It's Mama, she's in trouble. Those men, they came back, they're threatening to take the store if she doesn't pay up." Emma's face paled. "Oh no, not again. Okay, Miguel, calm down. We'll figure this out." She turned to Alex, apology written all over her face. "I'm so sorry, Alex, I have to go. It's It's a family emergency. Alex nodded, his mind racing. Of course, go. Is there anything I can do to help? Emma shook her head. No, but thank you. I'll see you tomorrow at the library, okay? Before Alex could respond, Emma and Miguel were hurrying away, their hushed conversation fading into the night. Alex stood there for a moment, processing what had just happened. The evening had taken such an unexpected turn. He thought about Emma, about the worry in her eyes when Miguel appeared. It was clear there was more going on here than just the library's financial troubles. As he slowly made his way back to his hotel, Alex's mind was whirring. He wanted to help, not just with the library, but with whatever was troubling Emma and her family. But how could he do that without revealing his true identity? For the first time since he'd arrived in Sunnyside, Alex found himself seriously considering the idea of coming clean about who he really was. The thought was terrifying. Would Emma understand why he had kept it a secret? Would she ever trust him again? But as he lay in bed that night, unable to sleep, Alex realized that he cared too much about Emma and this community to stand by and do nothing. Tomorrow, he decided, he would start looking for ways to help, discreetly for now. But if it came down to it, he was prepared to reveal his true identity if that's what it took to protect the people and the place that had come to mean so much to him. With that resolution, Alex finally drifted off to sleep, his dreams filled with Emma's smile and the challenges that lay ahead. The next morning, Alex woke with a sense of purpose that had been absent from his life for years. The events of the previous night, his conversation with Emma, the sudden appearance of Miguel, and the hints of trouble lurking beneath the surface had crystallized something within him. He was no longer content to be a passive observer in this community. It was time to take action. As he made his way to the library, Alex's mind raced with possibilities. He knew he had the resources to solve many of the problems facing Sunnyside, but using them would mean revealing his true identity. The risk of losing the genuine connections he'd formed, especially with Emma, weighed heavily on him. The library was quiet when he arrived, the usual morning bustle noticeably absent. He found Emma in her office, her face drawn with worry as she pored over a stack of papers. "Emma?" he called softly, knocking on the open door. She looked up, startled, then tried to compose herself. "Oh, Alex. Good morning. I'm sorry, I'm a bit distracted today." Alex stepped into the office, concern etched on his face. "Is everything okay?" "After last night, I was worried," Emma sighed, running a hand through her curly hair. "It's complicated. Family stuff, you know." She attempted a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Nothing for you to worry about." But Alex wasn't about to let it go that easily. He pulled up a chair and sat down across from her. "Emma, I know we haven't known each other long, but I care about you. And this community. If there's anything I can do to help, please let me know." For a moment, Emma's carefully maintained composure cracked. She looked at Alex, her eyes filled with a mix of gratitude and hesitation. "Thank you, Alex. That means more than you know, but it's not something you can help with. It's not just the library, my family. We're in trouble." Alex leaned forward, his voice gentle but firm. "Tell me, please." Emma took a deep breath, seeming to weigh her options. Finally, she spoke. "My brother, Miguel, the one you saw last night, he got involved with some bad people a while back. Loan sharks. He thought he could make some quick money to help our mother's store, but it didn't work out that way." Alex listened intently, pieces of the puzzle starting to fall into place. "Now these men are threatening my mother," Emma continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "They want the money Miguel borrowed, plus interest. If we don't pay, they're talking about taking the store. It's all my mother has." "Can't you go to the police?" Alex asked, already knowing the answer. Emma shook her head. "These people have connections, and my mother, she's an immigrant. She's afraid of drawing attention to herself, even though she's here legally. Plus, Miguel, he's not entirely innocent in all this. We're trying to handle it ourselves, but—" She trailed off, the weight of her worries evident in her slumped shoulders. Alex felt a surge of protective anger. The idea of Emma and her family being threatened, of this wonderful community being preyed upon by criminals, made his blood boil. In that moment, he made a decision. "Emma," he said, his voice steady, "I want to help. Not just with the library, but with this too. I have resources, connections. I might be able to do something." Emma looked at him, confusion and a hint of suspicion in her eyes. Resources? Connections? Alex, what are you talking about? You're a volunteer who just arrived in town. How could you possibly— This was it, the moment of truth. Alex took a deep breath, steeling himself for what he was about to do. Emma, there's something I need to tell you. I haven't been entirely honest about who I am. But before he could continue, they were interrupted by a commotion in the main area of the library. Raised voices and the sound of something crashing to the floor broke the tension in the office. Emma was on her feet in an instant, rushing out to see what was happening. Alex followed close behind, his confession momentarily forgotten. In the center of the library stood two men in expensive suits, looking entirely out of place among the bookshelves and reading nooks. One of them had knocked over a display of children's books, scattering them across the floor. Miguel was there too, his face pale with fear as he stood protectively in front of an older woman who could only be Emma and Miguel's mother. "Where's our money, kid?" one of the men was saying, his voice low and menacing. "Time's up. We've been patient, but now we need to see some cash." Emma rushed forward, placing herself between the men and her family. "This is a library," she said, her voice trembling slightly but firm. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave." The other man laughed, a cold sound devoid of humor. "Oh, we'll leave, as soon as we get what we came for. Unless you want us to start taking collateral." His eyes roamed over the library's meager resources, lingering on the outdated computers. Alex felt a familiar surge of adrenaline, the kind he used to get when facing down tough business competitors. But this was different. This wasn't about market share or profit margins. This was about protecting people he had come to care about deeply. Without thinking, he stepped forward, placing a hand on Emma's shoulder and gently moving her aside. He faced the two men, drawing himself up to his full height, his voice taking on the authoritative tone he had used in countless boardrooms. "Gentlemen," he said, his eyes cold and his voice steely, "I suggest you leave now. Whatever business you have here, it's over." The men looked at him, momentarily taken aback by his confident demeanor. Then the first one sneered. "And who the hell are you?" Alex paused for a fraction of a second. He could feel Emma's eyes on him, could sense the confusion and fear radiating from Miguel and his mother. In that moment, he knew there was no going back. "My name," he said clearly, "is Alexander Blackwood, and I'm about to become your worst nightmare." The effect was immediate. The men's eyes widened in recognition, their bravado faltering. Even Emma gasped softly behind him. "Blackwood," the second man said, his voice suddenly uncertain. As in the CEO of Blackwood Enterprises," Alex confirmed, his gaze unwavering. "Now, I don't know who you work for, but I can guarantee that by this time tomorrow I will. And trust me when I say that you do not want me as an enemy." He took a step closer, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave this library, and you're going to forget about any debt you think you're owed. If I see you or anyone associated with you anywhere near this family or this community again, I will use every resource at my disposal to make sure you regret it. Are we clear?" The men nodded, their earlier bravado completely evaporated. Without another word, they turned and hurried out of the library, the door slamming behind them. For a moment there was complete silence in the library. Then slowly, Alex turned to face Emma and her family. The looks on their faces, shock, confusion, and in Emma's case a hint of betrayal, made his heart sink. I can explain," he began, but Emma held up a hand, silencing him. "Not here," she said, her voice tight with emotion. "Not now. I need some time to process this." Alex nodded, understanding but hating the distance he could already feel growing between them. "Of course, I'll go, but Emma, please let me explain everything. When you're ready." Emma didn't respond, her gaze fixed on a point somewhere over his shoulder. With a heavy heart, Alex turned and walked out of the library, the weight of his revealed secret pressing down on him with each step. As he stepped out into the sunlight, Alex knew that everything had changed. His carefully constructed new life in Sunnyside had been shattered in an instant. But as he walked away from the library, he also felt a strange sense of relief. The truth was out now, for better or worse. The only question that remained was whether the connections he had formed, especially with Emma, were strong enough to withstand the revelation of his true identity. As he made his way back to his hotel, Alex could only hope that he hadn't lost everything he had come to cherish in his pursuit of a simpler life. The world seemed to move in slow motion as Alex made his way back to his hotel. The streets of Sunnyside, once a source of comfort and newfound purpose, now felt alien and unwelcoming. Every familiar face he passed seemed to stare at him with newfound suspicion, though he knew it was just his imagination running wild. As he entered his modest hotel room, the space that had become his sanctuary over the past few days now felt claustrophobic. Alex sank onto the bed, his head in his hands, replaying the events at the library over and over in his mind. The look on Emma's face, shock giving way to hurt and betrayal, was seared into his memory. He had known this moment would come eventually, had even been on the verge of revealing the truth himself, but the circumstances had forced his hand in the worst possible way. Hours passed as Alex sat there, alternating between self-recrimination and desperate strategizing. Should he go back to the library and try to explain? Should he give Emma space? Should he pack up and leave Sunnyside altogether, accepting that his experiment in living a simpler life had come to an abrupt and painful end? As evening fell, a soft knock on his door startled Alex out of his ruminations. His heart leapt, hoping against hope that it might be Emma. But when he opened the door, he found Michael, his driver, standing there with a concerned expression. "Mr. Blackwood," Michael said, his voice low. "I hope I'm not intruding, but, well, word travels fast in a small community. I heard about what happened at the library." Alex sighed, stepping back to allow Michael into the room. "I suppose I shouldn't be surprised. Please come in." As Michael entered, Alex was struck by the realization that this man who had been a constant presence in his life for years was now the only link between his old world and this new one he had been trying to create. "Sir," Michael began, then paused, seeming to search for the right words. "Alexander, I've worked for you for a long time, and I've never seen you as alive as you've been these past few days. Whatever brought you here, whatever you've found, I think it's important." Alex looked at Michael, truly looked at him perhaps for the first time. "Thank you, Michael. I think you're right. But I may have ruined everything." Michael shook his head. "With all due respect, sir, I don't think so. You did a good thing today, protecting that family. Yes, your method was unexpected, but your intentions were pure. If this Emma is half the person you seem to think she is, she'll see that too. She just needs time." Alex felt a glimmer of hope at Michael's words. "Do you really think so?" Michael nodded. "I do, but sir, if I may offer some advice." "Please," Alex said, gesturing for Michael to continue. "Don't run away. It might be tempting to go back to your old life, to the safety of what you know, but I think you'd be making a mistake. You came here looking for something, and I believe you found it. Don't give up on that so easily." Alex felt a lump form in his throat at the sincerity in Michael's voice. "I don't intend to," he said softly. "Thank you, Michael, for everything." After Michael left, Alex felt a renewed sense of determination. He wouldn't run away, wouldn't give up on the connections he'd made here. He would face the consequences of his actions and fight for the new life he'd begun to build. With that resolution in mind, Alex left his hotel room and stepped out into the cool evening air. He needed to clear his head, to strategize his next move. Without really thinking about it, his feet carried him towards the small park near the library, where he'd often seen families and children playing. As he approached, he saw a familiar figure sitting alone on a bench, illuminated by the soft glow of a streetlight. Emma. Alex's heart raced. Should he approach her? Would she even want to see him? Before he could decide, Emma looked up and their eyes met. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other across the darkened park. Then, almost imperceptibly, Emma nodded. Taking a deep breath, Alex walked over and sat down beside her, leaving a respectful distance between them. For several minutes they sat in silence, the weight of unspoken words hanging heavy in the air. Finally, Emma spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Why? It was a simple question, but Alex knew it carried the weight of so much more. Why had he lied? Why had he come to Sunnyside? Why had he involved himself in their lives? "I was lost," Alex began, his voice rough with emotion. "My life, it looked perfect from the outside. I had everything money could buy, but I felt empty, hollow. I needed to find something real, something meaningful. And then I found this place. Found you." Emma turned to look at him, her eyes searching his face. "So we were what? An experiment? A way for you to play at being normal?" Alex shook his head vehemently. "No, Emma, God no, you have to believe me. What I found here, the connections I've made, they're the most real thing I've experienced in years. Maybe ever." Emma was quiet for a moment, processing his words. "You lied to me, Alex, or should I say Alexander?" "Alex," he said quickly. "Please call me Alex. That's who I am here. That's who I want to be." Emma sighed, running a hand through her hair. "I don't know what to think, Alex. You swooped in like some kind of superhero today, and I'm grateful. Those men have been terrorizing my family for months, but I thought I knew you, and now I find out I don't know you at all." Alex felt a pang in his chest at her words. "You do know me, Emma. The person I've been here, that's the real me, the me I want to be. Alexander Blackwood, the CEO, the billionaire, that's just a role I play. But Alex, the guy who's been helping at the library, who's been getting to know this community, that's who I really am." Emma was quiet for a long moment, her gaze fixed on the darkened playground in front of them. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but firm. "I need time, Alex. It's a lot to process. You have to understand, this library, this community, it's my whole world, and you've just turned that world upside down." Alex nodded, his heart heavy but understanding. "I know, and I'm so sorry for the deception. I never meant to hurt you or anyone else here. I got caught up in the simplicity of it all, in the joy of just being Alex, not Alexander Blackwood." Emma stood up, wrapping her arms around herself as if warding off a chill. "I appreciate your honesty now, and I'm thankful for what you did today. But I need some space to think, to figure out what all this means." Alex remained seated, fighting the urge to reach out to her. "I understand. Take all the time you need, but Emma, I meant what I said before. I want to help. Not just with those men, but with the library, with the community, if you'll let me." Emma looked down at him, her expression unreadable in the dim light. "I don't know, Alex. I really don't. But I'll think about it. Good night." With that, she turned and walked away, leaving Alex alone on the bench. He watched her go, his heart aching, but a small flame of hope still burning. She hadn't rejected him outright. She was willing to think about it. It wasn't much, but it was something. As Alex made his way back to his hotel, he felt as though he was standing on the edge of a precipice. His old life was behind him, a life of wealth and power, but also of emptiness and loneliness. Ahead of him lay uncertainty, but also the potential for something real and meaningful. He thought of Emma, of the library, of all the people he'd met in Sunnyside. He thought of the sense of purpose he'd found here, the joy of making a difference in people's lives. And he knew with a certainty that surprised him that he couldn't go back to his old life. Whatever happened next, Sunnyside had changed him irrevocably. As he lay in bed that night, sleep eluding him, Alex made a silent promise to himself and to the community he'd come to care for. He would prove to Emma, to everyone, that his intentions were genuine. He would use his resources, his connections, not to buy their trust, but to earn it, to make a real difference in Sunnyside. With that resolve, Alex finally drifted off to sleep, his dreams filled with images of a future where he could be both Alex and Alexander, where he could use his wealth and power for good while still maintaining the genuine connections he'd formed here. It wouldn't be easy, he knew, but for the first time in years, Alexander Blackwood had something worth fighting for. The following morning, Alex woke with a sense of purpose that had eluded him for years. The events of the previous day had shaken him to his core, but they had also crystallized his resolve. He knew what he had to do, and for once, he had the means and the motivation to make a real difference. After a quick shower and a change into his now familiar casual clothes, Alex sat down at the small desk in his hotel room. He pulled out his phone, the one he had been avoiding since he arrived in Sunnyside, and took a deep breath. It was time to start bridging the gap between his two worlds. His first call was to Jessica, his executive assistant. Her voice was a mixture of relief and exasperation when she answered. "Mr. Blackwood, thank goodness. Are you all right? We've been worried sick." Alex felt a pang of guilt. In his quest to find himself, he had forgotten about the people who depended on him back in his old life. "I'm fine, Jessica. I'm sorry for worrying you, but I need your help with something important." For the next hour, Alex outlined his plans to Jessica, He wanted to set up a charitable foundation focused specifically on supporting community libraries and educational initiatives in underserved neighborhoods. The first beneficiary would be Sunnyside, but he had visions of expanding the program nationwide. "I need you to get the legal team on this right away," he told Jessica, "and I want to allocate a significant portion of my personal funds to get it started. Let's say $50 million to begin with." He could almost hear Jessica's jaw drop over the phone. $50 million, sir, are you sure?" Alex smiled to himself. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life, Jessica. This is important. Can you make it happen?" "Of course, Mr. Blackwood, I'll get right on it." After ending the call with Jessica, Alex made several more calls to his financial advisors, to contacts in the publishing industry, to tech companies he had invested in. By the time he finished, he had set in motion a series of initiatives that he hoped would not only save the Sunnyside Library, but transform it into a model for community engagement and education. As he ended his last call, Alex glanced at his watch and realized it was already past noon. He had been so engrossed in his plans that he had missed his usual morning visit to the library. A wave of uncertainty washed over him. Would he even be welcome there now? Deciding that there was only one way to find out, Alex gathered his courage and headed out. The walk to the library felt longer than usual, each step heavy with the weight of his revealed secret and the uncertainty of his reception. As he approached the familiar building, Alex saw Emma through the window, helping a group of children with what looked like an art project. The sight of her, so dedicated and caring, made his heart ache. He took a deep breath and pushed open the door. The usual buzz of activity in the library seemed to falter for a moment as he entered. He could feel eyes on him, curious and slightly wary. Emma looked up from the children's table, her expression unreadable. Before Alex could say anything, a small voice piped up. "Mr. Alex, you're back." It was Maria, the young girl he had helped with math problems just days ago. She ran up to him, seemingly oblivious to the tension in the room. "I got an A on my math test. Can you help me with my science homework today?" Alex felt a lump form in his throat. This simple, genuine interaction was exactly why he had fallen in love with Sunnyside. "That's wonderful, Maria," he said, kneeling down to her level. "I'd be happy to help you with science if that's okay." He glanced up at Emma, seeking her permission. Emma hesitated for a moment, then gave a small nod. "Go ahead, Maria. Mr. Alex can help you at the study table." As Maria happily led Alex to the table, chattering about photosynthesis and the water cycle, he could feel the atmosphere in the library slowly return to normal. The other patrons went back to their activities, though he could still feel the occasional curious glance. For the next hour, Alex lost himself in helping Maria and a few other children who drifted over to their table. It felt good, honest work, far removed from the corporate boardrooms and million-dollar deals of his other life. As the children dispersed, Alex finally found himself alone. He looked up to see Emma watching him from her desk, her expression thoughtful. Taking a deep breath, he walked over to her. "Emma," he began, his voice low, "I know you said you needed time, and I respect that, but I wanted you to know that I meant what I said. I want to help, not just with those men, but with the library, with the whole community." Emma regarded him silently for a moment. "And how exactly do you plan to do that, Mr. Blackwood?" There was a hint of challenge in her voice. Alex winced slightly at the formal address, but pressed on. "I've set some things in motion. A charitable foundation focused on supporting community libraries and educational initiatives. Sunnyside will be the first beneficiary, but the goal is to expand nationwide. I've also reached out to some contacts in publishing and tech." "Stop," Emma said, holding up a hand. Her voice was tight with emotion. "Just stop. Do you think you can just throw money at this and make everything okay? That you can buy our trust back?" Alex felt his heart sink. "No, Emma, that's not... This library, this community," Emma continued, her voice rising slightly. "It's not a charity case. We're not here for you to swoop in and save so you can feel good about yourself." Her words stung, but Alex could see the pain and fear behind them. "Emma, please," he said softly. "That's not what this is about. I'm not trying to buy anything. I want to help, in whatever way I can, whether that's reading to kids or using my resources to make sure this place can keep doing the amazing work it does." Emma was quiet for a long moment, studying his face. Finally, she sighed. "I believe that you want to help, Alex, I do. But you have to understand, this isn't just about money. This library, it's the heart of our community. It's about people, about connections. You can't just write a check and expect everything to be fixed." Alex nodded, feeling a glimmer of hope at her words. "I know, and I don't expect that. I want to be part of this community, Emma. Really part of it. The foundation, the other stuff, that's just a tool, a way to support the real work that happens here every day. Work that you do." Emma's expression softened slightly. "And what about Alexander Blackwood, the CEO? How does he fit into all this?" It was a fair question, and one that Alex had been grappling with himself. "I don't know exactly," he admitted, "but I know I can't go back to being just that person. The past few weeks here, they've changed me. I want to find a way to be both, to use the resources and connections I have as Alexander Blackwood to support communities like this, but to also be Alex, the guy who helps kids with their homework and learns about what really matters in life." Emma was quiet for a moment, processing his words. Then, to Alex's surprise, a small smile tugged at the corners of her mouth. "Well, I suppose if you're going to have a midlife crisis, starting a charitable foundation is better than buying a sports car." Alex couldn't help but laugh, feeling some of the tension between them dissipate. "Does this mean you're willing to give me a chance? To prove that I mean what I say?" Emma's smile faded, replaced by a more serious expression. "It means I'm willing to listen, to see what you have in mind. But Alex, you have to understand that trust, once broken, isn't easily rebuilt. It's going to take time and actions, not just words or money." Alex nodded solemnly. "I understand. And I'm prepared to put in the work, Emma, whatever it takes." As if on cue, the library door opened and Miguel walked in, looking nervous. He approached Emma's desk, glancing warily at Alex. "Sis," he said quietly, "those men, they're back. They're at the store with Mom right now. They're saying the deal's off, that they want the money by the end of the week, or—" Emma's face paled. She looked at Alex, a silent question in her eyes. Alex straightened up, feeling the weight of the moment. This was his chance to prove that he meant what he said, that he was committed to this community. "Let's go," he said firmly. "Both of you. It's time we dealt with this problem once and for all." As they hurried out of the library, Alex felt a mix of determination and apprehension. He was about to bring his two worlds into direct conflict, with the future of Sunnyside and his place in it hanging in the balance. But as he glanced at Emma's worried face, he knew he was exactly where he needed to be. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he would face them, not as the distant CEO, but as Alex, a part of this community he had come to love. The streets of Sunnyside seemed to blur as Alex, Emma, and Miguel made their way to the family store. The usual cheerful bustle of the neighborhood felt muted, overshadowed by the urgency of their mission. Alex's mind raced, formulating and discarding plans with each step. He was acutely aware of Emma's presence beside him, her worry palpable in the tense set of her shoulders. As they rounded the corner, the small grocery store came into view. Two men in suits, the same ones from the library confrontation, stood menacingly near the entrance. Through the window, Alex could see an older woman he assumed was Emma and Miguel's mother, her face a mask of fear and defiance. Before they could approach, Emma put a hand on Alex's arm, stopping him. "Alex," she said, her voice low and urgent, "I appreciate you wanting to help, but these men are dangerous. You don't have to do this." Alex met her gaze, seeing the conflict in her eyes, the desire to protect him warring with the desperate need for help. He placed his hand over hers, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "I know I don't have to, Emma. I want to. We're in this together." With a deep breath, Alex straightened his posture and strode towards the store, Emma and Miguel flanking him. As they approached, the two men turned, their expressions shifting from smug confidence to wary recognition as they spotted Alex. "Gentlemen," Alex said, his voice carrying the authority of boardrooms and billion-dollar deals, "I believe we have some unfinished business." The taller of the two men, clearly the leader, stepped forward. "Mr. Blackwood," he said, a sneer curling his lip. "Slumming it again, I see. This doesn't concern you. Walk away." Alex stood his ground, his gaze unwavering. "I'm afraid I can't do that. You see, this family, this community, they're under my protection now. Whatever debt you think you're owed, consider it settled." The man laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. "Protection? You might be a big shot in your world, Blackwood, but down here, you're nothing. You have no idea who you're dealing with. On the contrary, Alex replied, his voice cold. I know exactly who I'm dealing with. Dante Russo, isn't it? Second in command to Vincent Caruso, the loan shark who thinks he runs this part of town. The man, Dante, faltered for a moment, surprise flickering across his face before he could mask it. Alex pressed his advantage. Oh yes, I've done my homework. I know all about your operation. The extortion, the threats, the way you prey on hard-working families just trying to make ends meet. And I know something else too. He took a step closer, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. I know that the FBI has been building a case against your boss for months. Money laundering, racketeering, tax evasion, the works. Now imagine how interested they'd be in any additional information. Say from a witness willing to testify about your operations in Sunnyside. Dante's face paled, his bravado crumbling. You're bluffing, he said, but there was a tremor of uncertainty in his voice. Alex smiled, a cold, predatory expression that felt foreign on his face. Are you willing to bet your freedom on that? Because I can assure you, Mr. Russo, I have the resources and the motivation to make your life very, very difficult. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to walk away. You're going to forget about any debt you think this family owes, and you're going to leave Sunnyside, all of Sunnyside, alone, permanently. For a long moment, tension crackled in the air. Alex could feel Emma and Miguel's eyes on him, could sense the mixture of awe and apprehension radiating from them. Finally, Dante broke. Fine, he spat. It's not worth the hassle, but don't think this is over, Blackwood. You've made some powerful enemies today. As Dante and his associate retreated, Alex felt a wave of relief wash over him, but it was short-lived. As he turned to Emma, he saw a maelstrom of emotions playing across her face. Gratitude, admiration, and something else. Fear. Alex, she said softly, what you just did, thank you. But it changes things, Alex finished for her, understanding dawning. In his determination to help, he had once again blurred the lines between his two worlds, bringing the power and influence of Alexander Blackwood into the simple life he had been trying to build as Alex. Before they could discuss it further, the store door flew open, and Emma's mother rushed out, enveloping her children in a fierce hug. My darlings, she said, her voice thick with emotion. It's over? Truly over? Emma nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Yes, Mama, it's over. Thanks to Alex. The older woman turned to Alex, gratitude shining in her eyes. Thank you, young man. You've saved our family, our business. How can we ever repay you? Alex felt a lump form in his throat. There's no need for repayment, Mrs. Rossi, she supplied. Isabella Rossi. And there must be something we can do to show our gratitude. Alex shook his head, a small smile playing on his lips. Your acceptance is all the repayment I need, Mrs. Rossi. This community has given me far more than I could ever give back. As the Rossi family shared another embrace, Alex felt a complex mix of emotions. Joy at having helped, pride in standing up to the thugs, but also a gnawing uncertainty about what this meant for his place in Sunnyside. Emma must have sensed his turmoil because she gently extracted herself from her family and approached him. Alex, she said softly, can we talk? Privately? He nodded, following her a short distance away from the store. For a moment they stood in silence, the weight of all that had happened hanging between them. What you did back there, Emma finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. It was incredible, terrifying, but incredible. Alex ran a hand through his hair, suddenly feeling exhausted. I meant what I said, Emma, about wanting to protect this community, to be a part of it. Emma nodded slowly. I believe you. But Alex, the man I saw back there facing down those thugs, that wasn't the Alex I've come to know these past weeks. That was Alexander Blackwood, CEO and billionaire. I'm both, Alex said, a note of pleading in his voice. Can't I be both? Use the resources and influence I have as Alexander to help, but still be Alex, the man who's fallen in love with this community. The man who's fallen in love with you. The words slipped out before he could stop them, hanging in the air between them. Emma's eyes widened, a blush creeping up her cheeks. Alex, she said softly, I care for you too, deeply. But this, all of this, it's so complicated. You've built a life here under false pretenses. You've gotten involved in dangerous situations. And now I don't know if I'm talking to Alex the volunteer or Alexander the billionaire. Alex felt his heart constrict. I'm both, Emma. I'm still the same person who helped kids with their homework, who fell in love with this library and this community. The money, the power, that's just a tool. It doesn't define me. Emma was quiet for a long moment, her gaze searching his face. Finally, she spoke. I think I need some time to process all of this, to figure out how I feel. Alex nodded, his heart heavy but understanding. Of course, take all the time you need. But Emma, please know that my feelings for you, for this community, they're real. More real than anything I've felt in years. Emma gave him a small, sad smile. I believe you, Alex. I do. But belief isn't always enough. We both have some soul-searching to do. As they walked back to join the Rossi family, Alex felt as though he was standing on a precipice. He had saved the day, protected the people he had come to care about, but in doing so, he had also complicated his relationship with Emma and his place in Sunnyside. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the street, Alex knew that the coming days would be crucial. He had shown the power of Alexander Blackwood. Now, he would need to prove that he could still be Alex, the man who had found a home and a purpose in this small, vibrant community. The challenges ahead were daunting, but as he looked at Emma, at the Rossi family, at the familiar streets of Sunnyside, Alex felt a surge of determination. He had found something worth fighting for, and he wasn't about to give up now. Whatever it took, he would find a way to bridge his two worlds and become the man, the whole man, that this community needed and that Emma deserved. The days following the confrontation at the Rossi family store passed in a blur for Alex. The initial relief and triumph he felt at resolving the immediate threat quickly gave way to a more complex array of emotions. As he walked the streets of Sunnyside, he could feel the shift in the way people looked at him, a mixture of awe, gratitude, and wariness that made him acutely aware of the delicate balance he was trying to maintain. The library, once his sanctuary, now felt charged with an undercurrent of tension. Emma was polite but distant, her usual warmth muted as she grappled with her own conflicted feelings. The children, however, seemed oblivious to the change, still flocking to him for help with homework and story time. It was during one of these moments, as he sat surrounded by eager young faces, that Alex had an epiphany. These children didn't care about Alexander Blackwood, the billionaire. To them, he was simply Mr. Alex, the kind volunteer who made math problems less scary and brought stories to life. This, he realized, was the core of who he wanted to be. With this realization came a renewed sense of purpose. Alex threw himself into his volunteer work with even greater enthusiasm, determined to show Emma and the community that his commitment went beyond grand gestures and financial intervention. One afternoon, as he was helping to reorganize the library's outdated card catalog system, Alex overheard a conversation between Emma and an elderly patron. "I'm sorry, Mr. Johnson," Emma was saying, her voice tinged with regret, "but we just don't have the resources to start a computer literacy program for seniors right now. I know how important it is, but with our current budget..." Alex's ears perked up. Here was an opportunity, not to throw money at a problem, but to use his skills and connections in a meaningful way. Later that evening, after the library had closed, Alex approached Emma. "I couldn't help overhearing earlier," he began tentatively, "about the computer literacy program for seniors." Emma looked at him warily. "Alex, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but we can't solve every problem with your checkbook." Alex shook his head quickly. "That's not what I had in mind. I was thinking, what if I taught the class?" Emma's eyebrows shot up in surprise. "You? Why not?" Alex said, warming to the idea. "I have experience with technology, and I've enjoyed working with the kids here. I could volunteer my time to teach basic computer skills to seniors. No money involved, just me." For the first time in days, Alex saw a glimmer of the old warmth in Emma's eyes. "That's actually a wonderful idea, Alex. But are you sure you have the time? I mean, don't you have a company to run?" Alex took a deep breath. It was time to lay his cards on the table. "I've been doing a lot of thinking, Emma, about who I am, who I want to be. I've decided to step back from the day-to-day operations of Blackwood Enterprises. I'm appointing a new CEO to handle things, with me remaining as chairman of the board. It'll free up my time to focus on the charitable foundation and on being here, if you'll have me." Emma was quiet for a long moment, studying his face. "This is a big decision, Alex. Are you sure about this?" Alex nodded, feeling more certain than he had in years. "I've never been more sure of anything. This place, this community, it's given me a sense of purpose I never knew I was missing. I want to be a real part of it, Emma. Not as a billionaire benefactor, but as Alex, the guy who teaches computer skills to seniors and reads stories to kids." A small smile tugged at the corners of Emma's mouth. "Well, Mr. Computer Teacher, you'd better get to work on your lesson plans. The seniors in this neighborhood can be a tough crowd." Alex felt a surge of hope at her teasing tone. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. Over the next few weeks, Alex threw himself into his new role with gusto. The computer literacy classes for seniors became the talk of the neighborhood, with Alex's patient teaching style and genuine enthusiasm winning over even the most technophobic participants. But he didn't stop there. Drawing on his business experience, Alex helped Emma streamline the library's operations, finding creative ways to stretch their limited budget. He worked with local businesses to set up a book donation drive, refreshing the library's collection without spending a dime. And he continued his daily volunteer work, from shelving books to helping with after-school programs. Slowly but surely, Alex felt the atmosphere in the library and the neighborhood begin to shift. The wariness in people's eyes was replaced by genuine warmth and acceptance. He was no longer Alexander Blackwood, the billionaire outsider, but simply Alex, a dedicated member of the community. Emma, too, began to soften. Alex caught her watching him sometimes, a thoughtful expression on her face as he patiently explained email to an octogenarian, or celebrated a child's first time reading a full sentence on their own. One evening, as they were closing up the library, Emma broke the comfortable silence that had fallen between them. "You know, when you first told me who you really were, I thought this was all some sort of game to you, a way to feel good about yourself by playing at being normal." Alex felt his heart clench, but before he could respond, Emma continued, "But watching you these past few weeks, I've realized something. This isn't you playing at being someone else, this is you finally being yourself." Alex felt a lump form in his throat. "Emma, She held up a hand, silencing him gently. "Let me finish. What you've done for this community, for the library, it's incredible. But more than that, the way you've thrown yourself into it, the genuine joy you seem to find in helping others. That's the real you, isn't it? The you that got buried under all the expectations and responsibilities of being Alexander Blackwood." Alex nodded, not trusting himself to speak. Emma stepped closer, her eyes searching his face. "I think I'm finally starting to understand," she said softly. "You came here looking for something and you found it. But in the process, we found something too. We found you, the real you." In that moment, standing amidst the books and the lingering scent of paper and ink, Alex felt a profound sense of homecoming. He had spent weeks trying to reconcile his two identities, only to realize that they had already merged into something new, something authentic. "Emma," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "I meant what I said before. I've fallen in love with this community, with this life, and I've fallen in love with you. If you'll have me, I want to build a life here, a real life, combining the best of both worlds, using my resources to help, but doing the work myself, being a true part of this community." Emma was quiet for a long moment, and Alex felt his heart racing. Then, slowly, a smile spread across her face. "Well," she said, a teasing glint in her eye, "I suppose having a billionaire volunteer around does have its perks, but just to be clear, I'm not in love with Alexander Blackwood, the CEO." Alex felt his breath catch. "No?" Emma shook her head, stepping even closer. "No, I'm in love with Alex, the guy who spends hours teaching Mrs. Rodriguez how to use Facebook, who knows exactly how each kid in the neighborhood likes their stories read, and who looks at this dusty old library like it's the most magical place on earth." Before Alex could respond, Emma closed the distance between them, pressing her lips to his in a kiss that felt like coming home and embarking on a new adventure all at once. As they broke apart, both slightly breathless, Alex felt a sense of completeness he had never experienced before. Here, in this modest library in the heart of Sunnyside, He had found his true self and his true purpose. "So," Emma said, a mischievous smile playing on her lips, "what's next for the library's favorite billionaire volunteer?" Alex grinned, pulling her close. "Well, I was thinking we could start by finally updating that card catalog system. And then, who knows? The sky's the limit." As they walked out of the library hand in hand, Alex knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, he was exactly where he was meant to be. He had found his home, his purpose, and his heart in Sunnyside. And he couldn't wait to see what the future held. Not as Alexander Blackwood, not as just Alex, but as the man he had become. A perfect blend of both worlds, ready to make a real difference in the community he had grown to love. The early morning sun filtered through the windows of the Sunnyside Community Library, casting a warm glow over the rows of books and the two figures hunched over a table covered in blueprints and documents. Alex and Emma had been there since dawn, fueled by excitement and endless cups of coffee, as they pored over plans for the library's expansion. "So if we move the children's section here," Alex said, pointing to a spot on the blueprint, "we can create a dedicated space for the new computer lab without losing any of the reading areas." Emma nodded, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "And with the extra funding from your foundation, we can finally get those new computers and update our entire system." "Alex, this is going to change everything." Alex couldn't help but smile at her excitement. It had been 3 months since their kiss in the library, 3 months of working side by side to bring their shared vision for Sunnyside to life. The change in their relationship had been subtle but profound, their professional partnership deepening into something much more personal and meaningful. "You know," Alex said, leaning back in his chair, "when I first came to Sunnyside, I never could have imagined all of this. I was just looking for something. I didn't even know what." Emma reached across the table, taking his hand in hers. "And now?" Alex squeezed her hand, his voice soft with emotion. "Now I know I've found exactly where I'm supposed to be. Who I'm supposed to be with." The moment was interrupted by the jingle of the library door opening. They looked up to see Mrs. Rodriguez, one of Alex's most enthusiastic senior computer students, bustling in with a large Tupperware container. "Good morning, you two," she called out cheerfully. "I brought some homemade empanadas for my favorite teachers." "You both work too hard, you need to eat." Alex and Emma exchanged amused glances. The entire neighborhood had taken to looking after them, showering them with home-cooked meals and endless gratitude for their efforts to improve the community. As they sat around the circulation desk enjoying Mrs. Rodriguez's delicious empanadas and chatting about the upcoming community festival, Alex felt a profound sense of belonging. This, he realized, was what he had been searching for all along, not just purpose but community. A place where he was valued not for his wealth or status, but for who he was and what he contributed. The rest of the day passed in a whirlwind of activity. Alex taught his morning computer class to the seniors, marveling at their progress and enthusiasm. Emma led a lively story time for the neighborhood children, her animated reading bringing the tales to life. In the afternoon, they met with the local school principal to discuss a new after-school program that would bring students to the library for tutoring and enrichment activities. As evening approached and they prepared to close the library, Alex noticed Emma looking pensive. "Everything okay?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. Emma smiled, but there was a hint of nervousness in her eyes. "Yeah, I've been thinking about something, about us." Alex felt his heart rate quicken. "Oh?" Emma took a deep breath. "Alex, these past few months have been amazing. Working with you, seeing your dedication to this community, it's made me fall even more in love with you." Alex smiled, relief washing over him. "I feel the same way, Emma. You've shown me what it really means to be part of something bigger than myself." "That's just it," Emma continued. "We've been so focused on the library, on the community, and that's wonderful. But I think it's time we started thinking about us too, about our future." Alex's breath caught in his throat. "What exactly are you saying, Emma?" Emma's cheeks flushed slightly, but her gaze was steady. "I'm saying, maybe it's time we thought about making this partnership permanent, in every way." For a moment, Alex was speechless. Then a wide grin spread across his face. "Emma Rossi, are you proposing to me?" Emma laughed, the tension breaking. "I guess I am. So what do you say, Mr. Billionaire Librarian? Want to make it official?" Alex didn't hesitate. He swept Emma into his arms, spinning her around as she laughed. "Yes," he said, his voice thick with emotion. 1,000 times yes." As they shared a kiss, surrounded by the books and the quiet warmth of the library they both loved, Alex marveled at how far he had come. From a lonely billionaire searching for meaning to a man deeply embedded in a community, engaged to the woman he loved and more fulfilled than he had ever been. The news of their engagement spread through Sunnyside like wildfire. The next day, the library was flooded with well-wishers bringing gifts and congratulations. But amidst the celebration, Alex and Emma remained focused on their work, their shared vision for the future of Sunnyside driving them forward. In the weeks that followed, they threw themselves into planning, not just for their wedding, but for the grand reopening of the expanded library. Alex's foundation had provided the funds, but it was the community that brought the project to life. Local artists volunteered to paint murals in the new children's section. A group of retired carpenters built custom bookshelves. Even the local tech startup offered to set up and maintain the new computer systems. As the day of the grand reopening approached, Alex found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought him to this point. He thought of the lonely penthouse he had left behind, the empty success that had driven him to seek something more. And he thought of the richness of the life he had found in Sunnyside, the challenges, the joys, the sense of purpose and belonging. The night before the reopening, Alex and Emma stood in the middle of the transformed library, taking in the results of their hard work and the community's support. "It's more beautiful than I ever imagined," Emma said softly, her eyes shining with unshed tears. Alex wrapped his arm around her waist, pulling her close. "It's perfect," he agreed. "Just like you. Just like us." As they stood there, surrounded by the books and the promise of all the lives that would be touched by this place, Alex knew with absolute certainty that he had found his true home. Not in the luxury of his old life, but here in Sunnyside, with Emma by his side and a community that had embraced him as one of their own. Tomorrow they would open the doors to a new chapter, for the library, for Sunnyside, and for themselves. And whatever challenges lay ahead, Alex knew they would face them together, stronger for the love they had found and the purpose they shared. As they turned out the lights and locked up for the night, Alex took one last look at the library. In the moonlight streaming through the windows, he could almost see the ghosts of his past selves. The lost billionaire, the uncertain volunteer, the man struggling to reconcile two worlds. But those ghosts were fading now, replaced by the man he had become, a man who had found his true calling, his true love and his true self in the heart of Sunnyside. Hand in hand, Alex and Emma walked out into the quiet streets of their beloved neighborhood, ready to face whatever the future might bring. Together. The morning of the library's grand reopening dawned bright and clear, as if even the weather was celebrating the occasion. Alex woke early, his excitement making sleep impossible. As he made his way to the library, he marveled at the transformation of the neighborhood. Colorful banners hung from lampposts, and storefronts were decorated with signs supporting the library. The sense of community pride was palpable. When he arrived at the library, he found Emma already there, fussing over last-minute details. She looked up as he entered, her face breaking into a radiant smile that still made his heart skip a beat. "Can you believe it?" she said, gesturing around the newly renovated space. "It's really happening." Alex pulled her into an embrace, planting a soft kiss on her forehead. "Believe it, my love, you made this happen. We made this happen." As they put the finishing touches on the decorations and displays, a steady stream of volunteers began to arrive. There was Mrs. Rodriguez bringing enough homemade pastries to feed an army. Miguel and his mother came with fresh flowers from their store to brighten up the reading nooks. Even gruff old Mr. Johnson, who had once been Alex's most reluctant computer student, arrived early to help set up chairs. By the time the official opening hour arrived, a sizable crowd had gathered outside the library doors. Alex and Emma stood hand in hand, ready to cut the ribbon and usher in a new era for Sunnyside. The mayor, a jovial woman who had become a strong supporter of their efforts, stepped up to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice ringing out over the assembled crowd, "today we celebrate more than just the reopening of a library. We celebrate the power of community, the importance of education, and the incredible things that can happen when people come together with a shared vision." She went on to praise Emma's tireless dedication and Alex's generous contributions, but emphasized that it was the entire community of Sunnyside that had made this day possible. As Alex listened, he felt a lump form in his throat. How far he had come from the isolated billionaire he once was, to be standing here, part of something so much bigger than himself. When it came time to cut the ribbon, Alex insisted that Emma do the honors. As the scissors sliced through the bright red ribbon, a cheer went up from the crowd. The doors swung open, and people began to stream in, their faces alight with wonder at the transformed space. The day was a whirlwind of activity. Children raced to explore the new children's section, with its cozy reading nooks and interactive learning stations. Seniors gathered in the state-of-the-art computer lab, eager to continue their lessons. In the new community meeting room, local groups were already planning workshops and events. Throughout it all, Alex and Emma moved through the crowd, greeting people, answering questions, and basking in the joy that radiated from every corner of the library. More than once, Alex caught Emma wiping away tears of happiness. As the day drew to a close and the last of the visitors trickled out, Alex and Emma found themselves alone in the quiet library. The space hummed with potential, with the promise of all the lives that would be touched and changed within these walls. "So," Alex said, pulling Emma close, "ready for our next big event?" Emma laughed, her eyes sparkling. "You mean the small intimate wedding we planned that somehow turned into the social event of the year for Sunnyside?" Alex grinned sheepishly. It was true that their initial plans for a quiet ceremony had snowballed as more and more community members expressed their desire to be part of the celebration. It seemed that the entire neighborhood viewed their union as a symbol of hope and renewal for Sunnyside. "Well," he said, "I suppose it's fitting. This community brought us together. It's only right that they be there to see us make it official." 2 weeks later, Alex stood at the front of the library's new community room, which had been transformed into a beautiful wedding venue. Bookshelves had been draped with twinkling lights and flowers, creating a magical backdrop. The room was packed with familiar faces, not just their family and close friends, but what felt like the entire population of Sunnyside. As the music started and Emma appeared at the end of the aisle, Alex felt his breath catch. She was radiant in a simple white dress, her curls adorned with small flowers. But it was the joy in her eyes, the love that shone from her face, that truly took his breath away. Their vows were simple but heartfelt, a promise not just to each other, but to the community they had come to love. As they sealed their union with a kiss, the room erupted in cheers and applause. The reception that followed was a true community affair. Tables groaned under the weight of potluck dishes brought by their neighbors. Mrs. Rodriguez's empanadas sat next to Mr. Lee's Korean barbecue, a culinary representation of Sunnyside's diversity. Children darted between the tables, faces sticky with cake. Seniors who had never danced in years took to the makeshift dance floor, encouraged by the joyous atmosphere. As Alex and Emma swayed to their first dance as a married couple, he leaned in to whisper in her ear. "Thank you," he said softly. Emma looked up at him, a question in her eyes. "For what?" "For everything," Alex replied. "For showing me what really matters in life, for helping me become the man I always wanted to be, for loving me both as Alex and as Alexander." Emma's eyes shimmered with tears as she pulled him closer. "And thank you," she whispered back, "for choosing us, for choosing Sunnyside, for showing us that one person really can make a difference." As the night wore on and the celebration showed no signs of slowing down, Alex found himself taking a moment to step back and observe. He watched as Emma laughed with a group of children, her face alight with joy. He saw Miguel, now studying business with Alex's mentorship, deep in conversation with some of Alex's former business associates who had attended the wedding. He noticed Mrs. Rodriguez teaching some of his old board members how to dance salsa, the uptight executives loosening up under her enthusiastic instruction. In that moment, Alex realized that he had achieved something far greater than he ever had in his corporate life. He had helped to create a true community, a place where people from all walks of life could come together, learn from each other, and build something beautiful. As he rejoined the celebration, pulling Emma into another dance, Alex felt a profound sense of contentment. He had started this journey searching for meaning, for a way to fill the emptiness in his life. What he had found was so much more: love, purpose, and a community to call his own. The library stood as a testament to what they had built together, not just a building full of books, but a center of learning, growth, and connection. And as Alex looked into Emma's eyes, alight with love and shared purpose, He knew that this was just the beginning. Together, they would continue to nurture and grow this community, to touch lives and create opportunities. The lost billionaire had found his home, his heart, and his true calling in the most unexpected of places. And as the music played on and the stars twinkled above Sunnyside, Alex knew that the best chapters of his life were still to come. The months following Alex and Emma's wedding were a whirlwind of activity in Sunnyside. The success of the library's renovation had sparked a renewed sense of possibility throughout the neighborhood. Community meetings at the library were packed with residents eager to discuss new initiatives and improvements. On a warm Saturday morning, Alex found himself standing before one such gathering, outlining plans for a neighborhood-wide green initiative. With the support of local businesses and volunteers, he explained, pointing to a detailed map, we can transform vacant lots into community gardens, install solar panels on public buildings, and create a network of bike lanes. The enthusiasm in the room was palpable, but so was the undercurrent of concern. "This all sounds wonderful," said Mr. Guzman, owner of the local hardware store. "But where's the money coming from? We can't expect you to fund everything, Alex." Alex smiled, appreciating the community's growing sense of independence. "That's exactly right, Mr. Guzman. This isn't about me funding projects. It's about us working together to secure grants, engage in fundraising, and leverage our collective resources." As the meeting continued, with residents offering ideas and volunteering their skills, Alex felt a familiar warmth spread through his chest. This was what he had envisioned, a community empowered to shape its own future. Later that evening, as Alex and Emma walked home hand in hand, he shared his thoughts. "You know, when I first came here, I thought I could solve everything with money, but this is so much more powerful." Emma squeezed his hand, her eyes shining with pride. "You've given them something far more valuable than money, Alex. You've given them belief in themselves." Their conversation was interrupted by the buzz of Alex's phone. He frowned as he read the message. "It's Jessica. There's an issue with the foundation that needs my attention. I might have to go into the city tomorrow." Emma nodded, understanding, but Alex could see the flicker of disappointment in her eyes. It wasn't the first time his old life had intruded on their new one, and they both knew it wouldn't be the last. The next day, as Alex sat in a sleek conference room in Manhattan, listening to lawyers discuss the intricacies of non-profit law, he felt the stark contrast between this world and the one he'd left behind in Sunnyside. The meeting dragged on, and Alex found his mind wandering to the community garden planning session he was missing. Finally, as the meeting concluded, Alex made a decision. "Jessica," he said to his assistant, "I need you to start looking for someone to take over the day-to-day operations of the foundation, someone who can be based here in the city." Jessica looked surprised. "Are you sure, Mr. Blackwood? This foundation was your vision." Alex nodded firmly. "It was, but now it's time for it to grow beyond me. Find someone passionate about community development, someone who can take this work nationwide while I focus on Sunnyside." As he made his way back to Sunnyside that evening, Alex felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He was fully committing to the life he'd chosen, the community he'd come to love. He arrived home to find Emma surrounded by stacks of papers, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Budget reports," she explained with a sigh. "The library's programs have been so successful that we're outgrowing our resources again." Alex sat beside her, scanning the numbers. "We knew this might happen," he said gently. "It's a good problem to have, but still a problem." They spent the next few hours brainstorming solutions, grant proposals, fundraising events, partnerships with local businesses. As they worked, bouncing ideas off each other and building on each other's thoughts, Alex marveled at how in sync they had become, in work as in life. The next few weeks saw Alex and Emma throwing themselves into new projects with renewed vigor. They launched a mentorship program, pairing successful professionals from Alex's old network with promising young people from Sunnyside. Emma started a literacy campaign that soon spread to neighboring communities, but their work wasn't without challenges. As Sunnyside began to flourish, concerns about gentrification began to surface. Longtime residents worried about rising rents and changing neighborhood dynamics. Alex and Emma found themselves navigating complex discussions about sustainable development and community preservation. They organized forums, bringing together residents, local officials, and urban planning experts, to craft policies that would allow Sunnyside to grow while maintaining its unique character and ensuring that no one was left behind. Through it all, their partnership, both personal and professional, continued to deepen. They celebrated their first anniversary with a quiet dinner at home, reflecting on the whirlwind year they'd had. "Did you ever imagine this is where we'd be when you first walked into the library?" Emma asked, her eyes twinkling. Alex laughed, shaking his head. "Never in my wildest dreams. But I wouldn't change a thing." As they toasted to another year of love and shared purpose, Alex felt a sense of contentment wash over him. The journey hadn't always been smooth, but every challenge had only strengthened their bond and their commitment to Sunnyside. Their peaceful moment was interrupted by a knock at the door. It was Miguel, looking excited and slightly nervous. "Sorry to disturb you," he said, "but I couldn't wait to share the news. Remember that business plan I've been working on? Well, I've secured funding to open a small tech startup right here in Sunnyside." The news was met with enthusiastic congratulations and an impromptu celebration. As Alex watched Emma hugging her brother, saw the pride and joy on their faces, he felt a profound sense of fulfillment. This was the ripple effect they'd hoped for, empowering others to create positive change. Later that night, as they lay in bed, Emma turned to Alex with a serious expression. "There's something I've been wanting to talk to you about," she said softly. Alex propped himself up on an elbow, giving her his full attention. "What is it, love?" Emma took a deep breath. "I've been thinking, maybe it's time we started a family of our own. Seeing Miguel today, how far he's come, it made me think about legacy, about the future we're building." Alex felt a surge of emotion, joy, excitement, and a touch of nervousness. "Emma, are you saying—" She nodded, a smile spreading across her face. "I'm saying I'm ready if you are, ready to add a new chapter to our story." Alex pulled her close, his heart full to bursting. "Nothing would make me happier," he whispered. As they drifted off to sleep, wrapped in each other's arms, Alex's mind swirled with visions of the future. A child of their own, growing up surrounded by the love and support of the Sunnyside community. New challenges to face, new joys to experience. He thought about how far he had come from the lost, lonely billionaire he once was. He had found purpose, love, and a true home. And now he and Emma were poised to embark on their greatest adventure yet. In Sunnyside, with its community gardens and bustling library, its mentorship programs and budding startups, Alex and Emma had laid the foundation for a legacy of positive change. And as they stood on the brink of parenthood, they knew that the best was yet to come. The story of Sunnyside and of Alex and Emma was far from over. It was, in many ways, just beginning. And whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, supported by the community they loved and the love they shared. The soft glow of dawn was just beginning to creep through the curtains when Alex awoke to the sound of quiet whimpering. He smiled, his heart swelling with love as he gently extricated himself from Emma's embrace and padded over to the crib in the corner of their bedroom. "Good morning, little one," he whispered, lifting his daughter into his arms. Sophia, now 6 months old, blinked up at him with Emma's hazel eyes, a gummy smile spreading across her face as she recognized her father. As Alex cradled Sophia, gently swaying and humming a lullaby, he marveled at how much his life had changed in the past year. The journey to parenthood had been filled with excitement, anxiety, and more love than he ever thought possible. Emma stirred in the bed, her eyes fluttering open. "My turn," she asked sleepily, reaching out for the baby. Alex carefully passed Sophia to Emma, watching as his wife and daughter snuggled together. The sight never failed to fill him with a profound sense of peace and purpose. "We should start getting ready," Emma said after a while. "Big day today." Alex nodded, excitement bubbling up inside him. Today was the grand opening of the Sunnyside Community Center, a project that had been in the works for over a year. What had started as a simple idea during one of their community meetings had blossomed into an ambitious undertaking that would provide a space for education, recreation, and support services for the entire neighborhood. As they went about their morning routine, getting themselves and Sophia ready for the day, Alex couldn't help but reflect on how far Sunnyside had come. The once struggling neighborhood was now a model of community-driven development, attracting attention from urban planners and community organizers from across the country. They made their way to the new community center, Sophia babbling happily in her stroller. The streets were already bustling with activity, neighbors calling out greetings as they passed. Alex and Emma had become fixtures in the community, known not just for their work with the library and various initiatives, but as friends and neighbors themselves. As they approached the community center, they saw a crowd already gathering. The sleek modern building stood in stark contrast to the older structures around it, yet somehow it fit perfectly into the fabric of the neighborhood. Solar panels glinted on the roof, a testament to Sunnyside's commitment to sustainability. Miguel was waiting for them at the entrance, beaming with pride. His tech startup, housed in one wing of the new center, had become a success story in its own right, providing jobs and training for local youth. "Ready for the big moment?" he asked, tickling Sophia's chin and earning a giggle from his niece. Emma nodded, her eyes shining with excitement and unshed tears. "I can't believe we're really here, that this is really happening." Alex squeezed her hand. "Believe it, love. This is all because of you. Your vision, your dedication." Emma shook her head. "No, it's because of us. All of us." She gestured to the gathered crowd, a mix of familiar faces and new residents, all united in their love for their community. As the ribbon-cutting ceremony began, Alex found himself overwhelmed with emotion. He listened as community leaders spoke about the impact the center would have, about the programs it would house, from job training to health clinics, from arts classes to a state-of-the-art gym. When it was his turn to speak, Alex stepped up to the microphone, Sophia in his arms and Emma by his side. He looked out at the sea of faces, Mrs. Rodriguez beaming with pride, Mr. Johnson, who now taught computer classes to other seniors, the Guzman family whose hardware store had expanded to meet the needs of the growing community. "When I first came to Sunnyside," Alex began, his voice thick with emotion, "I was a man lost in his own life, searching for meaning. What I found here was so much more than I ever could have imagined. I found purpose. I found love." He smiled at Emma. "I found a home." He paused, bouncing Sophia gently as she began to fuss. "But more than that, I found all of you, a community of people who care, who work tirelessly to lift each other up. This center isn't my legacy, or Emma's. It's yours, all of yours. It's a testament to what we can achieve when we come together, when we believe in ourselves and in each other." As applause erupted, Alex felt Emma's hand slip into his. He looked at her, saw the tears of joy in her eyes, and knew she was feeling the same overwhelming sense of pride and gratitude. The rest of the day was a blur of activity. They gave tours of the new facility, participated in the various opening day events, and greeted what felt like every resident of Sunnyside. Sophia was passed from arm to arm, doted on by her extended community family. As evening fell and the celebrations began to wind down, Alex and Emma found a quiet moment alone on the rooftop garden of the community center. The setting sun painted the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink, casting a warm glow over Sunnyside. "Can you believe how far we've come?" Emma asked, leaning into Alex's embrace as they looked out over their beloved neighborhood. Alex shook his head, still somewhat in awe. "Sometimes I have to pinch myself from that first day in the library to this. It's been quite a journey." Emma turned to face him, her eyes serious. "Alex, there's something I need to tell you. I've been thinking about this for a while now." Alex felt a flicker of concern. "What is it, love?" Emma took a deep breath. I think it's time for me to step down as head librarian." Alex's eyebrows shot up in surprise. "But Emma, the library is your life. You love it there." She nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "I do, I always will, but I think it's time for new blood, new ideas. And I have a new project in mind." Alex listened intently as Emma outlined her vision, a non-profit focused on replicating the Sunnyside model in other struggling communities across the country, using their experiences, their successes and failures to help other neighborhoods find their own paths to revitalization. As she spoke, her eyes alight with passion, Alex felt a familiar surge of love and admiration. This was the woman he had fallen in love with, always looking forward, always seeking to make a difference. "It's a brilliant idea, Emma," he said when she finished. "And I think you're the perfect person to make it happen. Whatever you need, I'm here to support you." Emma's smile was radiant. "I was hoping you'd say that, because I was thinking, maybe this could be our next chapter, together, Your business acumen, my community experience. We could really make a difference on a larger scale. Alex felt a thrill of excitement at the prospect. It was a new challenge, a new way to use their skills and resources to create positive change, and most importantly, it was something they could do together. As they stood there, overlooking the neighborhood they had helped to transform, Alex felt a profound sense of gratitude for the twist of fate that had brought him to Sunnyside, for the love he had found with Emma, for the community that had embraced them and helped them grow. Their story, he realized, was far from over. In fact, in many ways, it was just beginning. With Sophia, with this new venture, with the ever-evolving tapestry of Sunnyside, there were still so many chapters yet to be written. As the last rays of sunlight faded and the stars began to twinkle overhead, Alex pulled Emma close and kissed her softly. "To our next chapter," he whispered. Emma's eyes sparkled with love and excitement. "To our next chapter," she agreed. And as they made their way back down to join their friends and neighbors, to collect their daughter and head home, both Alex and Emma knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. With the love they shared, the strength of their community, and their unwavering commitment to making a difference, there was nothing they couldn't achieve. The story of Sunnyside, of Alex and Emma, of a community reborn would continue, and it promised to be a tale of hope, of perseverance, and of the extraordinary power of ordinary people coming together to create change. 5 years had passed since the opening of the Sunnyside Community Center, and the neighborhood had flourished beyond anyone's wildest dreams. The streets bustled with life, local businesses thrived, and a sense of pride and community spirit permeated every corner. On a warm summer evening, Alex stood at the podium in the community center's main hall, surveying the packed room. The occasion was bittersweet, a celebration of Sunnyside's success, but also a farewell of sorts. "When I first came to Sunnyside," Alex began, his voice carrying easily through the attentive crowd, "I was a man searching for meaning. What I found here was beyond anything I could have imagined. I found purpose, love, and a community that became my family." His eyes found Emma in the front row, Sophia, now a vibrant 5-year-old, sitting on her lap, and their 2-year-old son, Daniel, squirming in the seat next to them. Alex's heart swelled with love. "Together," he continued, "we've achieved something remarkable. Sunnyside has become a model for community-driven development, a beacon of hope for struggling neighborhoods across the country. And now, it's time for us to share what we've learned, to help other communities find their own paths to revitalization." A murmur of understanding rippled through the crowd. Everyone knew about Emma's nonprofit, which had been gaining national attention for its success in replicating the Sunnyside model in other cities. "Emma and I will be stepping back from our day-to-day roles here in Sunnyside," Alex announced, his voice tinged with emotion. "But we're not saying goodbye. This will always be our home, our community. We're simply expanding our family to include other neighborhoods in need." As Alex spoke about their plans, the cities they would be working with, the partnerships they had formed, he could see a mix of emotions on the faces before him. Pride, sadness, excitement. It was a testament to how deeply intertwined their lives had become with the fabric of Sunnyside. After the speech, as people mingled and shared memories, Alex found himself approached by a young woman he didn't recognize. "Mr. Blackwood," she said, her eyes shining with admiration. "I just wanted to thank you. I grew up in Sunnyside, left for college, and now I'm back as a teacher at the elementary school. The changes you and Mrs. Blackwood have brought to this community, they've given kids like me opportunities we never dreamed of." Alex felt a lump form in his throat. "Thank you," he said softly. "But remember, it wasn't just us. It was everyone in this community coming together." As the evening wore on, Alex and Emma made their rounds, sharing hugs, tears, and laughter with the people who had become their extended family. Mrs. Rodriguez, now in her 80s but still spry, made them promise to visit often. Miguel, whose tech startup had grown into a successful company, pledged to continue their work in Sunnyside. Later that night, after tucking Sophia and Daniel into bed, Alex and Emma found themselves on the rooftop garden of their home. The same apartment Alex had rented when he first came to Sunnyside, now renovated and expanded for their family. "It feels surreal," Emma said, leaning into Alex's embrace as they looked out over the twinkling lights of the neighborhood. To think of how far we've come, how much has changed." Alex nodded, his chin resting on top of her head. "I know. Sometimes I still expect to wake up back in that penthouse, alone and lost." Emma tilted her head up to look at him. "Any regrets?" Alex's answer was immediate and heartfelt. "Not a single one. Everything that led me here. To you, to our family, to this community. I wouldn't change a thing." They stood in comfortable silence for a while, reflecting on the journey that had brought them to this point. The challenges they'd faced, the victories they'd celebrated, the lives they'd touched. "You know," Alex said thoughtfully, "when I first came here, I thought I was leaving my old life behind, but in reality, I was finding a way to make it meaningful. To use the resources and skills I had in a way that really mattered." Emma smiled. "And in the process, you became the man you were always meant to be." As they discussed their plans for the future, the cities they would visit, the communities they would help, Alex felt a familiar surge of excitement. It was the same feeling he'd had when he first volunteered at the Sunnyside Library, when he and Emma had first kissed, when they'd opened the community center. The thrill of making a difference, of being part of something bigger than himself. The next morning, as they prepared to leave for their first assignment in a struggling neighborhood in Detroit, Sunnyside turned out in force to see them off. The streets were lined with well-wishers, many holding handmade signs expressing gratitude and love. As their car pulled away, Sophia and Daniel waving enthusiastically from the back seat, Alex felt a moment of déjà vu. He was leaving Sunnyside just as he had arrived, with hope in his heart and the promise of a new beginning. But this time he wasn't alone. He had Emma by his side, their children in the back, and the love and support of an entire community behind them. And they weren't really leaving. They were taking a piece of Sunnyside with them, spreading its spirit of community and hope to other neighborhoods in need. As Sunnyside faded in the rearview mirror, Alex reached over and squeezed Emma's hand. "Ready for our next chapter?" he asked. Emma's smile was radiant. "Always," she replied. And as they drove towards their future, towards new challenges and new opportunities to make a difference, Alex knew that their story, and the story of Sunnyside, would continue. It would live on in the lives they'd touched, in the community they'd helped build, and in the ripple effect of positive change that would spread far beyond the boundaries of one small neighborhood. The lost billionaire had not only found himself, but he had also found a way to use his wealth and influence to create lasting, meaningful change. And with Emma by his side, their children to carry on their legacy, and the spirit of Sunnyside in their hearts, Alex knew that the best chapters of their story were still to come. As they hit the open road, the rising sun painting the sky in hues of hope and promise, Alex felt a profound sense of fulfillment. He had started this journey searching for purpose, and he had found so much more: love, family, community, and a life rich with meaning. The story of Alex, Emma, and Sunnyside was far from over. In many ways, it was just beginning. And as they embarked on this new adventure, ready to touch more lives and transform more communities, they carried with them the most powerful lessons Sunnyside had taught them: that with love, dedication, and the power of community, anything is possible. The end was just another beginning, and the legacy of Sunnyside would continue to grow. One neighborhood, one life, one positive change at a time.